Chapter 25:12. The ancient barren ominous grounds was the ancient barren continent of the tricontinent Kyushu. This place was separated from the barren country by thousands of mountains and rivers. Of course, with the strength of Du Xiaofu and the rest, traveling through the space tunnel was faster than traveling through a wormhole. If everything went smoothly, this trip would not take up too much of their time. However, not long after they left the sacred palace, Du Xiaofu suddenly stopped and jumped out of the space tunnel. Then, Han Ji's expression changed slightly and she turned around. The two's actions confused Sun Qin, Jiang Yiting, Lu Limo, Ji Qianyue, and the rest of the younger generation of the human race. Out of confusion, they also stopped and followed him. Whoosh! Without the protection of the group of saints, the space tunnel was destroyed in the blink of an eye and disappeared into the vast void. At the same time, Du Xiaofu, Han Ji, and more than 10 people appeared in the sky above a mountain stream. A crescent moon hung above their heads. This mountain stream was narrow, long, and deep, like a deep ravine that had been carved out by a sharp blade. The stone walls on the left and right were like two huge barriers that rose to the sky. Above them, the vegetation was lush and green. Colorful jasper flowers bloomed and swayed with the breeze. The moonlight shone down from the sky and shone on the colorful flowers, reflecting a faint sense of tranquility. It was beautiful beyond compare. When Lu Limo, Jiang Yiting, and the rest appeared, they felt refreshed by this picturesque scene. However, in the next moment, everyone's expression changed. This was because, along with the faint fragrance of the flowers, there was a pungent smell of rotting corpses that attacked everyone's sense of smell. Something's not right. The aura here is indescribably eerie. It's very strange. Yao Tianwu of the Yao family frowned and said in a low voice. Emperor, should we go down and take a look? Ren Yuan of the Ren family looked at Du Xiaofu and asked. Du Xiaofu nodded and said, let's go. The group of people flew down one after another and landed on the ground in the mountain stream that was covered with weeds. Creak, Lu Limo's younger brother, Lu Mingimo, gently took a step forward, but a sound came from beneath his feet. Brother Rock Emperor, look. Under this patch of weeds, there's actually a ground full of bones. Profound energy was emitted from the tip of Lu Mingma's feet and spread out into a fan shape. Like a gigantic shovel, it sent the grass in front of him flying. What followed were withered black creatures' bones that danced in the air one after another. Du Xiaofu stretched out his palm. His energy erupted and sucked a leg bone into his palm. This is the leg bone of a demonic beast. Du Xiaofu rubbed his thumb slightly, and the black matter on the bones fell off, revealing the grayish-white bones. This black substance is the flesh of living creatures. It must have attached itself to the bones because of the loss of blood essence. It hasn't been corroded yet. The number 1 hero stood out and said. That's right. The luster on the bones has all disappeared, and they have become grayish-white. These creatures seem to have died because of the loss of their life essence. Feng Wuxia said. Let's go and take a look in front. After Du Xiaofu finished speaking, a faint golden light emitted from his body as he flew into the distance. As the group moved forward, they realized that the deeper they went, the shallower the bones on the ground were. In the end, they saw the corpses of living creatures that had just died. There were humans and beasts. These living creatures had died in the same way. They had all lost their blood essence, and even their souls seemed to have been sucked away. Only their shriveled bodies were left. They had died extremely miserably. Based on visual estimation, there are at least 1,000 corpses here. Han Ji pursed her red lips and said. Who is so cruel to suck their blood essence and souls? Lu Mingma was pure and kind. Seeing such a situation, he couldn't help but speak out angrily. Could it be the devil religion's doing? Du Xiaofu guessed, and his brows knitted together. For such a cruel act, other than the devil religion's people, he couldn't think of anyone else. Just as everyone was still thinking, a burst of creepy laughter floated down from the sky. He 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 he. You humans came at the right time. Killing you will allow my strength to improve further. He 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 he. This laughter floated in all directions, sometimes east and sometimes west, making it difficult for people to detect where it came from. Pretending to be mysterious. Du Xiaofu snorted, then raised his fist and suddenly punched towards a certain spot in the void. Boom! A domineering force swept out, and a thick thunderbolt cut through the night sky, tearing a terrifying crack in the void that extended 10 miles away. Naturally, a figure appeared in this crack. This figure didn't seem to have any intention of continuing to dodge. He openly faced Du Xiaofu and the others, standing in the air, and his throat constantly emitting a gloomy and strange laughter. His body was covered by a cloak, and it was filled with a bloody aura. The pitch-black hood covered his entire face, making it difficult for people to see his appearance. Seeing this figure, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but raise an eyebrow and say, "So it's you." Naturally, he knew this person. In recent years, this person had appeared several times and fought with him. In the Tomb of Eternity in the ancient barren fearsome grounds, this person had appeared before. However, Du Xiaofu didn't know where he came from, and what kind of relationship he had with him. The only thing he was sure of was that he knew this person. He 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 he. Today, none of you can think about leaving. Then, he tilted his head to look into the void and said, "If you don't show up now, when will you?" As soon as he finished speaking, another figure appeared from the void. Similarly, this person's face was also covered by a hood. Only a pair of eyes could be seen, and they were glowing with a grayish-white light. Unlike the former, this person's aura carried an extremely thick bloody aura. "The two of you made such a big fuss, you must be waiting for me." Looking at these two people, Du Xiaofu said aloud. He had a feeling that these two people's actions were unusual. With their cultivation bases, they would definitely have been able to avoid him the moment he arrived. Therefore, they didn't show up because he accidentally bumped into this matter. He 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 he. You guessed right, we've been waiting for this day for too long. The black-robed man laughed sinisterly. That's true. Since that's the case, let me see what kind of scoundrels you two are. Du Xiaofu didn't want to continue talking nonsense. If he wanted to know who they were, he could directly knock them down with his fist and take off their hood. Otherwise, there would be nothing to hide. Chapter 25:13. Du Xiaofu, times have changed. Do you really think you can hide the truth from the masses? The man in the robe who reeked of blood said in a low voice. His voice sounded very young. However, in those grayish-white eyes, there was a strange brilliance. As soon as he finished speaking, a thick blood-red light burst out from his body. In a flash, he appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. A pair of skinny palms reached out from under his sleeves. His fingers curled into claws and clawed downwards. A sinister aura spread out, and a dark blood-red light burst out. The pair of claws carried a ferocious aura as if they were going to steal one's soul. Other than Du Xiaofu and Hun Ji, the dozen or so young powerhouses of the human clan felt their souls tremble. They felt different degrees of impact and took a few steps back at the same time. Everyone, retreat. I'll deal with them. Du Xiaofu snorted as he sent Lu Limo, Sun Qinjiang, Yiting, Ren Yuan, and the others away. When he heard the other party say his name, he knew that his guess was right. These two people were definitely waiting for him here on purpose. It was very likely that they were people he was familiar with. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes. The golden rock wings spread out behind him. Golden light shot out in all directions as he shouted, sky-shaking wings. Golden runes swirled as the wings slashed downwards, colliding directly with the pair of skinny palms. Boom, a terrifying energy burst out, and a loud boom rang out. The void shook. The man in the robe and Du Xiaofu retreated at the same time, each standing 100 feet away. Who is that person? He's so terrifying. He's evenly matched with the human emperor in their first clash. Could he be a powerhouse from some ancient faction? Feng Wuxia, Ren Yuan, Yao Tianwu, and the number one hero were all shocked. They knew about Du Xiaofu's cultivation. He was the one who killed the Beast Alliance's Patriarch Zhang Jie and Patriarch Feng San, as well as the human clan's Patriarch Yu. That mysterious expert was actually able to hold his own against him for a short period of time. Just what kind of background did he have? The Demon King, Du Xiaofu. Looks like this is all there is to it. The man in the robe and hat sneered. He moved his body again, and he clashed with Du Xiaofu. On the other side, the black-robed man who appeared first, he stood on the side with his arms crossed. He watched the two powerhouses, as if he had no intention of interfering. I don't care who you are. Today, I will uncover your true face. Sword breaking 10,000 miles. The purple heavenly palace appeared. Purple heavenly palace was purple heavenly palace do an unparalleled sword light formed. The azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise roared and attacked. The roars of the dragon, the tiger, the sparrow, and the turtle shook the void. The ferocious beasts twisted around the sword light and rushed toward the man in the robe and hat. Boundless blood massacre. The man in the robe and hat shouted. He raised his hands, palms facing up, and a murderous aura rolled out. In the mountain stream, the withered bones covered by weeds began to move. Endless death aura rose and quickly gathered, condensing toward the man in the robe and hat. Then, a bright black ball of light formed in front of him. Within it, countless evil ghost heads appeared. The hoarse cries of the evil spirits reverberated, as if they wanted to bite and devour everything. Boom, the dazzling sword light slashed down in the blink of an eye, colliding with the ball of light. As soon as the two came into contact, they crushed each other at the same time, and then exploded. The mysterious runes, which carried a vast aura, tangled, bit, and devoured the evil spirits that broke out of the seal. The terrifying aura was mighty, forcing the two of them to retreat at the same time. As for Lu Mingma, Ji Qianyue, and the others, they retreated dozens of miles away, not daring to stay in the center of the battle. Du Xiaofu, if this is all you have, then it's too disappointing. The man in the robe and hat said faintly. His tone was a little disappointed. Is that so? If this is all you have, then everything can be over. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. Although he said so, the shock in his heart was inevitable. He himself had obtained countless opportunities, which allowed him to be ranked among the first-class powerhouses. However, the person in front of him, who sounded very young, could easily take his 1,000-mile sword. This was truly inconceivable. Moreover, on the other side, there was still a man in a black robe who had not made a move yet. However, even so, Du Xiaofu was confident that he could defeat him quickly. Without further delay, Du Xiaofu waved his sleeve and put away the purple-gold heavenly palace. Then, he slowly raised a fist in front of him. He stood in the air, the golden wings of the rock flapping behind him, and did not do anything else. However, as he raised his fist, the Xian Qi in the heavenly palace rushed to his limbs and bones. An indescribable aura fluctuated from his body, which instantly covered the entire area. Evil spirits. When the man in the robe and hat saw this, he did not waste any more words. That pair of gray eyes surged with a ruthless and cold light. His body fluctuated with a treacherous aura, which affected some kind of invisible force in this area. The Yin Qi within a radius of hundreds of miles surged and gathered around the man in the robe and hat, quickly condensing into countless evil spirits and evil spirits. Chaotic and mournful screams echoed in the mountain stream, as if they wanted to drill into people's minds and devour their souls. The man in the robe and hat sneered and quickly rushed toward Du Xiaofu. His two palms turned into ghost claws, and he was about to give Du Xiaofu a fatal blow. However, In the next moment, when he was about 10 feet away from Du Xiaofu, the purple-robed youth's figure strangely disappeared in front of his eyes. This unforeseen event shocked the man in the robe and hat. However, before this surprise could really arise, he saw a ball of golden light explode in the void in front of him. Then, a fist without any aura swung out from the golden light and directly hit his body. Tyrannical Fist Wei. A cold voice rang in the man's ears. Until now, he was still shocked by Du Xiaofu's sudden disappearance. And his body had been violently smashed by such a punch. Outside his body, countless evil spirits were destroyed in the golden light, purified by the righteous qi, and dissipated into nothingness. The man in the robe and hat's slender body was directly sent flying. A long arrow of blood spurted out from his mouth, nailing a hole in the void. "Let me see what kind of god you are, you scoundrel." Du Xiaofu snorted coldly and did not stop. A pair of golden wings flapped violently, and his figure flew out and caught up with the man in the robe and hat. Du Xiaofu struck out again, and a terrible force swept out and hit the man's body. Swish, the robe exploded, and the man in the robe and hat was directly exposed to Du Xiaofu's eyes, which made his eyes suddenly focus. "It's you." Chapter 25:14. While the opponent was unprepared, Du Xiaofu suddenly unleashed the first form of Fuyao. This was the supreme technique of the primordial golden-winged Great Ping Bird clan. It silently passed through the space barrier and took the opponent by surprise, destroying the attack that the man in the robe had been preparing. What followed was Du Xiaofu's palm, which shattered the robe that covered the man's face, revealing a pale, handsome face. Looking at this familiar yet strange face, Du Xiaofu was incomparably shocked and abruptly stared blankly for a moment. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the first black-robed man's feet flashed and he quickly captured the exposed man in the robe and brought him far away to prevent Du Xiaofu from killing him again. "How can this be? Weren't you already dead?" Du Xiaofu did not stop him, but stood in the air and said in disbelief. The man in front of him was tall and slender, and he was extraordinarily handsome. Du Xiaofu was very familiar with him. Although his aura was sinister and fierce now, and was completely different from before, Du Xiaofu still recognized him at a glance. This man was Dongli Qi Huang, whom he had killed in front of countless people at the Great Luan sect. "Du Xiaofu, I'm still alive. You didn't expect this, did you? Ha ha ha." Dongli Qi Huang reached out to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth and laughed wildly. Although he had been caught off guard and suffered Du Xiaofu's attack, he did not seem to have suffered any serious injuries. The aura on his body was not any weaker than before. "Ha! I was wondering who it was. In recent years, you have hidden your identity and attacked me several times. You have a strong sense of enmity." Du Xiaofu recovered from his initial shock and smiled faintly. "Dongli Qi Huang, so what if you're not dead? With your current appearance, you're still no match for me." It was obvious that the East mythical phoenix relied on consuming the blood and souls of living beings to gain its current dominating capabilities. "Du Xiaofu, don't you think you're too arrogant?" Beside Dongli Qi Huang, the black-robed man said coldly. Two cold eyes shot out from under the hood. "Who are you? Since you're so confident that you can defeat me, why are you hiding under the hood and not daring to show yourself?" Du Xiaofu said with a smile. At this point, he could confirm with certainty that this person was definitely an old friend of his who had interacted with him before. "You." The black-robed man was speechless. "I, Dongli Qi Huang's, this life. Du Xiaofu, you're the one who destroyed everything I had and turned me into this. My motivation for me to Xiaofu is to defeat Ofu Xiaofu. Only in this way can I extinguish the hatred in my heart for you." Dongli Qi Huang gritted his teeth and said. His eyes were full of murderous intent. He couldn't wait to tear Du Xiaofu into pieces. Even though his heart was full of hatred, he wasn't overly agitated. The Eastern mythical Scarlet Phoenix believed that with its current strength, it definitely had the qualifications to fight Du Xiaofu head-on. If you want to kill me, I, Du Xiaofu, am always ready. Du Xiaofu said loudly. The grudge between him and Dongli Qihuang was irreversible. It would not end until one of them was dead. Du Xiaofu's eyes were solemn. He glanced at the skeletons in the narrow valley and said, "Since you dare to wait for me here, you must have absolute confidence that you can defeat me. Since that's the case, let me see what level you have reached with the cultivation method of absorbing the blood essence and souls of living creatures. Let me see if you are qualified to defeat me." These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth slowly. Along with these words, a purple gold light burst out from his body. His purple robe fluttered in the wind. The energy between heaven and earth suddenly tightened. In an instant, all of it was plundered and quickly gathered towards Du Xiaofu. Gee! A roc's cry pierced the sky and cracked the earth. The shadow of the golden-winged rock soared into the sky and roared. A vast aura was brewing in this part of the world. It was as if an ancient pressure was spreading and pressing, filling every inch of the space. Du Xiaofu, let me fight you. Dongli Qihuang was about to make his move, but the black-robed man beat him to it. His figure moved, and he rushed up. At the same time, a large amount of murderous aura gushed out and covered his entire body. Be careful of Du Xiaofu's strange space technique. Dongli Qihuang didn't stop him. Instead, he reminded him in a deep voice. He had just suffered a loss. Naturally, he didn't want to see his companion repeat the same mistake. Ming Luo, fierce general, rise. The black-robed man let out a deep roar. Countless murderous aura circled around him rapidly. Runes as small as mosquitoes were arranged and combined, drowning him completely. Countless mysterious runes revolved according to a strange trajectory, forming the body of a ferocious ghost that was thousands of feet tall. This was the Ming Luo fierce general that the black-robed man mentioned. Roar! The Ming Luo fierce general's face was ferocious. A loud roar came out from his bloody mouth. The roar shook the sky. As he opened his mouth, a thick stench spewed out, bringing with it a terrifying aura that could corrode everything. On the walls of the valley, the essence of all the plants was instantly sucked dry when they encountered this aura. They turned into fine powder and fell down. Humph, evil ghost, how dare you be so fierce? Du Xiaofu snorted. The golden wings of the great rock flapped horizontally. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the Ming Luo fierce general. At the same time, Du Xiaofu raised his palm. Golden light burst out and turned into 1,000,000 feet in size. He suddenly clenched his fist in the air. Boom, 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 a thunderbolt as thick as a mountain fell from the sky. It split the night sky and was caught by the golden palm. In the sacred palace, after comprehending the inheritance left by the ancestor, Du Xiaofu had made great progress in the lightning profound. In the field, Du Xiaofu held the thunderbolt tightly. Without the slightest pause, he used it as a long whip and lashed down at the Ming Luo fierce general. Roar! The Ming Luo fierce general roared and took a step forward. The heaven and earth trembled. A battle axe as big as a mountain was held in his hand. It fluctuated with the color of blood. A terrifying murderous aura whistled and chopped down at Du Xiaofu's head. Boom! Like a waterfall, the thunderbolt and the blood-colored battle axe collided and instantly bombarded together. Two forces that carried completely opposite auras collided and exploded with an earth-shaking roar. The aura of extreme yang was vast and mighty, and the aura of cold and fierce filled the air. The walls of the valley on both sides of the valley were blasted into a circular gap that was dozens of miles wide. Rubble flew into the sky and shattered the void into countless pieces. Lu Limo, Sun Qin, Ren Yuan, and the other young experts of the human race, along with Hun Ji, all retreated to 100 miles away. They looked at this scene with fear and trepidation. Dongli Chihuang also hid in the distance. He did not dare to stay in the center of the battle. What's the background of that black-robed man? He's so fierce and doesn't seem to be inferior to the human emperor. These two people are too terrifying. Everyone discussed animatedly. Hun Ji's seductive big eyes were also shining with an inexplicable brilliance. Chapter 25:15. Thump, thump, thump. The black-robed Ming Luo fierce general held the blood-red battle axe in his hand and kept retreating. The void beneath his feet collapsed and was annihilated. Huge footprints were left in the narrow valley below, and countless rocks and trees were turned into dust. Du Xiaofu's body flashed with golden light, and he quickly retreated, avoiding the most direct energy impact. The huge palm formed by Xian Qi had already dissipated. The lightning bolt that was as thick as a mountain directly turned into shattered runes that filled the sky. They danced in the air, flickering indeterminately. The two sides were evenly matched with each other, and there was no clear winner. Du Xiaofu, you can't do anything to me now. A loud voice came from the Ming Luo fierce general. With every word, the void trembled. A ferocious and valiant aura spiraled in the surroundings and reverberated endlessly. You do have some strength, but if that's all, it's far from enough to kill me. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes and said softly. He didn't expect this person's strength to be on par with Dongli Chihuang. Although he didn't use his full strength, there was no doubt that the other party was the same. However, even when facing ancestor Feng San and the Yu clan's old emperor, he didn't back down. At this time, Du Xiaofu couldn't have any fear in his heart. Kill! The Ming Luo fierce general roared, and his roar cut through the void. The blood-red battle axe emitted a glaring scarlet light. If one looked closely, they could see countless resentful spirits struggling and rolling in the blood-red light. Their faces were twisted, and they let out soundless wails. The Ming Luo fierce general rushed forward, and the battle axe in his hand chopped down again. Thunder martial vein, rise! Du Xiaofu shouted. He didn't change his move, because thunder and lightning were the nemesis of Yin Qi. Streaks of lightning as thick as chopsticks flashed out of his body, intertwining with each other like meridians in a human body. As if sensing the call of the thunder martial vein, countless thunderclouds instantly gathered high in the sky, churning non-stop. Following that, bolts of lightning condensed into a huge net that covered an area of a few hundred miles, covering the head of the Ming Luo fierce general. Qi La. The blood-red battle axe struck the lightning net, and a long and narrow hole was directly cut open. At this moment, the big net finally descended, trapping Ming Luo Xiong's incomparably tall body within. Well, lightning crackled as countless electric tongues slithered around, constantly rubbing against the ruthless aura on the Ming Luo fierce general's body and consuming it. Lightning symbols flickered one after another. Roar, trapped, the Ming Luo fierce general roared crazily, the blood-evil battle axe in his hand slashing left and right. Cracks appeared on the lightning net one after another, and its aura gradually dimmed. In the end, when the lightning was extinguished, the aura of the Ming Luo fierce general became much weaker. Time to end this. Du Xiaofu snorted coldly when he saw this. With a thought, the purple gold heavenly tower appeared in his hand. Then, his body shook slightly, and his figure disappeared from the spot again. The ultimate mystery of the Golden-Winged Rock clan was suddenly activated. Be careful. In the distance, Dongli Chihuang shouted, wanting to warn the black-robed man. However, before his voice could be heard, Du Xiaofu had already appeared again. The purple gold heavenly tower was held in his hands, and a terrifying and vast aura fluctuated, causing the void to buzz and tremble. Overbearing sword way. A loud shout came from Du Xiaofu's throat, and a simple and unadorned sword slashed down. The sword radiance, which carried a vast and righteous aura, rushed straight out, and the overbearing aura cut through the void, slashing towards the extremely tall figure. Qi, The Ming Luo fierce general raised his battle axe to meet the attack, but it was broken in an instant. The sword radiance turned and slashed directly on his chest. The sharp sword aura burst forth, and instantly cut the Ming Luo fierce general's body from head to toe, into two halves. Then, the dense and mysterious runes were annihilated and shattered, and rushed in all directions. The fiendish aura was destroyed, and countless resentful spirits drifted away, rushing high into the sky and burrowing into the ground to be free. Accompanied by a muffled groan, a slender figure flew out, dragging a long trajectory in the air. On the black-robed man's body, dark red blood splattered, dyeing the sky red. Du Xiaofu's golden rock wings flapped, and he caught up with the black-robed man in 8 steps. The purple-gold heavenly tower slashed, and the golden runes swept out, about to cut the black-robed man into 2 halves. Du Xiaofu, don't even think about hurting him. At this moment, Dongli Qihuang had already moved, rushed from the side, and blocked in front of Du Xiaofu. 2 pairs of ghost-like claws tore at Du Xiaofu, and 10 pitch-black marks were scratched out in the void. Humph, no one can save him today. Du Xiaofu snorted lightly, and then he executed the Fuyao move again, and his body suddenly disappeared. Dongli Qihuang's sharp claws grabbed empty air, and he turned around in shock, only to see that he had already pounced in front of the black-robed man. Then, a purple-gold palm struck out with a piercingly cold force. The black-robed man wanted to adjust his form in the air to dodge such a strike. However, his speed was not faster than Du Xiaofu, who possessed the golden rock wings. The terrifying force in the palm spewed out, and the black-robed man was hit, and the black robe on his body exploded. A long arrow of blood also flew out from his mouth. Qin Yen. The instant the black-robed man's hood exploded, Du Xiaofu's gaze shot over. That person's handsome appearance naturally entered his line of sight. Just as Du Xiaofu expected, this black-robed man was really an old friend that he was familiar with. This person was the leading disciple of the Profound Talisman sect, Qin Yen. Even though he was somewhat prepared in his heart, Du Xiaofu was still greatly shocked, and the truth was placed before him. He himself, including the current desolate country, had a deep relationship with the Profound Talisman sect. Only this Qin Yen was something that Du Xiaofu disliked the most. But then again, because of Zhu Xue and the others, Du Xiaofu had never completely shed all pretenses with him and treated him as a life-and-death enemy. But he did not know that this Profound Talisman sect's eldest disciple, who had always thought himself infallible, actually hated him to such an extent. As expected, it's another acquaintance. Du Xiaofu laughed and attacked again without hesitation, capturing the heavily injured Qin Yen in his hand as if he was capturing a little chick. Glancing at Dongli Qihuang, who was still in a daze, Du Xiaofu said with a faint smile, "So it's the 2 of you, no wonder you schemed to kill me together." After pondering for a moment, Du Xiaofu already understood. Even though he didn't have the most direct conflict with Qin Yen, some friction between the 2 of them had long since caused this proud genius of the past to feel enmity towards Qin Yen. Du Xiaofu lifted Qin Yan's body up, and his tone became gloomy. "I was wondering earlier why the Eastern Flame Crimson Phoenix would come back to life. Now it would seem like all of this is probably related to you, right?" Chapter 25:16. Qin Yen laughed miserably and didn't say anything as he was grabbed by Du Xiaofu by the collar and held in his hand. Qin Yen didn't speak, and his body twisted and struggled with all his might while a deep blood-red glow fluctuated and poured out a strand of force with the intention of struggling free. But strands of lightning erupted from Du Xiaofu's palm and suppressed the baleful aura, causing all of Qin Yan's resistance to seem so powerless and futile. Du Xiaofu. On the other side, the Eastern Flame Crimson Phoenix gnashed her teeth to the point they almost shattered, and her voice was filled with boundless hatred. In the end, she actually started to roar. "Fight me openly if you have the balls. I refuse to believe that I can't kill you." Du Xiaofu couldn't help but laugh with ridicule when he heard this. "You seem to be very aggrieved. If it's really like this, then I'll fulfill your wish." As soon as he finished speaking, the energy of lightning gushed out from his palm and set up a strong restriction. Circle after circle of lightning light fluctuated like ropes, binding Chen Yan within it. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to escape the fate of being sealed. "Help me look after him. Don't let him escape." Du Xiaofu tossed casually, and Chen Yan's figure instantly tore through the sky like a shooting star to descend by the side of Lu Limo, Hun Ji, and the others who were 50 kilometers away. Hun Ji's fine brows knit together, and she seemed to feel that Du Xiaofu's words carried a trace of the nature of an order, so she was slightly displeased. Her red lips opened, yet she didn't say anything in the end, and she just nodded to display her agreement. After he finished doing all this, Du Xiaofu turned around to face the Qi Li and Qi Huang, and his violet robe fluttered without the wind. Golden light enshrouded his body while lightning coiled around his body, causing him to seem like a god that had descended into the mortal world, and he was mighty and extraordinary. "Kill!" Dongli Qi Huang shouted in a low voice when he saw this, and he took the initiative to attack. Earlier, Chen Yan had attacked with his full strength and executed the underworld general, yet he still lost to Du Xiaofu, and it was even to the extent that he didn't have much strength to fight back. This caused the Qi Li and Qi Huang to not dare be careless in the slightest. "Nether blood light, Hell's Gate. Open!" With Dongli Qi Huang's shout, a strange energy gradually rose up, filling every inch of the surrounding several hundred kilometers. Dark clouds moved across the sky, obscuring the crescent moon and causing the ground below to sink into darkness. Boundless black light suddenly flashed on the ground beneath everyone's feet, followed by clouds of blood-red mist. As soon as this blood mist appeared, it transformed into countless evil spirits and ferocious spirits. It was like the door to the netherworld had been opened, and ferocious beings had broken through the restrictions and intended to wreak havoc in all directions and destroy everything. Those ferocious mouths opened wide, emitting waves of whimpering roars that made one's scalp go numb. "Retreat!" Lu Xiaoma, Ren Yuan, and the number one hero hurriedly retreated, wanting to hide further away. However, the young powerhouses of the human race felt as if their bodies had sunk into a swamp. Some kind of strange mysterious force entangled their bodies, causing them to feel sticky and difficult to move their feet. Everyone's Xian Qi circulated wildly in their bodies, but it was difficult to break free from the shackles. They could only move their bodies slowly and with great difficulty. Even Du Xiaofu, who was in the center, felt the same way. Those ferocious spirits and ferocious spirits all bared their fangs and brandished their claws, pouncing towards him. Petty tricks. However, Du Xiaofu only chuckled at this and did not react violently. He was not in a hurry. He raised his hand and several rays of light of different colors swept out from between his eyebrows. Boom, 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 buzz, 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 several bolts of spiritual thunder whistled high into the sky. As soon as they appeared, lightning flashed and roared incessantly, circling above Du Xiaofu. Roar, 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 countless evil spirits and ferocious spirits, with sharp roars, leaped and pounced. Pairs of sharp claws slashed through the dark void, adding a sense of gloominess to this world. Ferocious spirits and evil spirits should all be suppressed and killed. Du Xiaofu said in a deep voice. As he waved his hand, the golden crow sky-burning thunder above his head bloomed as bright as the sun. A curtain of lightning rained down and enveloped his entire body. The strong and fierce aura was vast and mighty, preventing the ferocious spirits and ferocious spirits from getting close to him. Then, Du Xiaofu waved his hand again. The heavenly yin lightning hummed and emitted rays of starlight, spreading out in the sky, releasing a gentle glow. However, this gentleness contained an unparalleled fierce aura. Those ferocious spirits and ferocious spirits, under the shine of the starlight, became a little dimmer. Those who were not strong enough all held their heads and howled in pain as if they had encountered something terrible. However, the starlight was everywhere. No matter what they did, there was nowhere to escape. This was not the end. Following Du Xiaofu's actions, crackling sounds of thunder and lightning spread out one after another. The heavenly earth-shattering thunder, the 3,000 shocking thunder, the silver net soul-devouring thunder, the soul-annihilating thunder, and the others also displayed their might one after another, each emitting a different aura. These auras were either extremely strong and young, ferocious and domineering, or pervasive and seeping into the soul. Terrifying power poured out, tearing and killing, cutting the void into countless pieces. For a time, lightning crisscrossed and surged mightily. This area turned into a vast sea of lightning. Du Xiaofu and Dongli Qihuang's figures were both drowned in the lightning and ferocious spirits that filled the sky. With the help of Hun Ji, the young experts of the human race had long escaped from the battle. This power is really too terrifying. Brother Rock's strength is too terrifying. If it were me, I would probably be killed in a single exchange, my body and soul destroyed. Everyone shuddered when they saw the terrifying scene. In front of everyone, Chen Yan, whose cultivation was sealed, did not speak. But that handsome face was twitching non-stop at this moment, and the corners of his mouth trembled without end. In the depths of his eyes, there was boundless fear brewing. The powerful cultivation that Du Xiaofu displayed had ultimately crushed his confidence and moved him. However, he still had hope in his heart. Because the final outcome was still unknown. As long as he did not see Dongli Qihuang completely defeated, he still held on to hope that Du Xiaofu could be killed. However, in the next moment, these hopes in Chen Yan's heart all turned into a heavy warning. Because he saw a purple-robed figure appear from the destroyed area. That figure pushed aside the boiling sky and strode out with large steps. In his hand, he was even carrying the dying Dongli Qihuang. It was like carrying a little chick, just like his previous encounter. At this instant, the last trace of hope in Chen Yan's heart was obliterated. So what if all of you are strong? No matter how cruel and ferocious your tricks and methods are, before I, Du Xiaofu, you'll forever be a stepping stone on my path. These words were spoken by Du Xiaofu, and it carried a peerlessly domineering aura as he tossed Dongli Qihuang to the ground. Pooh! A mouthful of blood sprayed from Dongli Qihuang's mouth as he rolled on the ground in pain. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, his grayish-white eyes opened a slit with great difficulty, and deep hatred flashed through them. Du Xiaofu's words seemed to be correct. At the beginning, his strength was entirely capable of taking Du Xiaofu to be an ant, and he could easily crush Du Xiaofu with a single finger. But gradually, that young man from all those years ago rose up like the rising sun, and no one could restrain him any longer. Moreover, everything he possessed was lost step by step during this process, and it was seized away by Chen Yan. In the end, even his life was practically lost at Chen Yan's hands. Even if it was now, he'd painstakingly cultivated with evil techniques and advanced at a godly speed. However, he still seemed to be so powerless before Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu, what qualifications do you have to laugh at us? You're just luckier than us. On the other side, Chen Yan, who'd had his cultivation sealed, laughed bitterly as he spoke fiercely. As soon as he opened his mouth, fresh blood covered his pure white teeth, and it was suffused with dense viciousness. Luck. Ha! Du Xiaofu started laughing as well because he was naturally able to discern the unwillingness in Chen Yan's words. But Du Xiaofu couldn't be bothered to explain himself at all. During these past few years, he'd grown step by step, and he'd indeed obtained various fortuitous encounters. However, his current strength was completely built on his own hard work. He'd risked life and death countless times, fought countless times while bathed in blood, and there wasn't the slightest element of trickery. There were actually people who attributed all of this to luck. Perhaps to enemies like Chen Yan, Qi Li, and Qi Huang, they felt that fate played tricks on them and favored one while discriminating against the other, and it was extremely unfair. But no matter how many fortuitous encounters and benefits Du Xiaofu obtained, and no matter how others looked at him, they couldn't completely deny the hard work he'd put in. How do you intend to deal with these two people? Hun Ji swayed her waist as she walked forward gracefully, and she asked Du Xiaofu. Her bright and moving eyes flickered with a strange glow. What? You're interested in them? Du Xiaofu's brows raised when he saw this, and he smiled as he spoke. He knew that Hun Ji was formed from the incomplete soul of a primeval expert, and she could take the energy of the soul for her own use. On the other hand, the techniques Dongli Qihuang and Qin Yan cultivated were extremely evil. In the dilapidated gorge below, the blood essence and souls of the skeletons that covered the ground had been sucked dry by them. It was unknown exactly how many living beings they'd slaughtered. But one thing was for sure, the souls of these two people were surely evil and terrifyingly strong. To Hun Ji, it was definitely a great supplement. If she really wanted it, he really had no reason to refuse. Although this method was rather cruel. However, after Hun Ji's eyes flickered, the corners of her small mouth twitched, and she continued Du Xiaofu's words as she teased, "Forget it. Actually, the one I'm most interested in is you." After saying that, she stared straight at the young man in front of her, and the smile at the corner of her mouth carried a trace of playfulness. Du Xiaofu was completely immune to Hun Ji's teasing. Naturally, he didn't notice that there was a hint of seriousness mixed in that playfulness. Behind Hun Ji, Lu Limo, Ren Yuan, Feng Wuxia, and the others all had embarrassed expressions on their faces. Especially Lu Limo, Sun Qin, and Jiang Yiting, they couldn't help but smile bitterly in their hearts. Ever since the Yu family rebelled, Du Xiaofu had killed the Yu family's old emperor in an invincible manner, wiped out the Yu family, and took over the position of the human emperor. From then on, there was an invisible barrier between them and this young man, and it seemed like it could no longer be crossed. A scholar prefers death to humiliation. Du Xiaofu, if you're a man, kill me with a sword. Dongli Qihuang's mouth held a cold smile as he said hatefully. Don't worry, I'll fulfill your wish as usual. Du Xiaofu's voice was clear, and as he spoke, the purple gold heavenly tower appeared in his hand again. Profound qi surged from the heavenly tower and poured into the sword. The four phantoms of the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise shook the sky, and their roars shook the void. A purplish gold sword radiance formed in an instant and slashed down at the neck of the east, leaving scarlet phoenix in his hand. At this moment, a look of fear finally appeared in his eyes. Seeing the sword light fall, Dongli Qihuang reluctantly closed his eyes and waited for the judgment of fate. However, just as Du Xiaofu's purple gold heavenly tower was about to cut off Dongli Qihuang's head, an earth-shattering roar came from afar. Roar! This loud roar was like thunder, and it shook the void far away. Then, a monstrous light rushed out, and the body of a beast appeared. In a flash, it appeared beside Du Xiaofu, and it was incomparably fast. Show mercy! A furry claw, incomparably huge and covered in golden fur, blocked the sharpness of Du Xiaofu's purple gold heavenly fault. Clang! It was like the sound of metal and stone colliding, and a series of sparks flew between the sword and the claw. In Du Xiaofu's hand, the purple gold heavenly tower was shaken up. In an instant, Hun Ji, Lu Limo, the number one hero, and the others all unsheathed their weapons, as if facing a great enemy. However, Du Xiaofu had no intention of pursuing the troublemaker who came out of nowhere. He waved his hand, indicating that there was no need to be nervous, and calmly put away his long sword. Jiangchen, why are you here? Looking at the giant beast in front of him, Du Xiaofu asked in surprise. The beast's eyes were as red as cinnabar, its body was covered in scales, and its claws were curved like hooks. Its teeth were exposed, like sharp blades, and the smell of blood filled the air. It was Jiangchen's golden growler. Jiangchen seemed to have just arrived. He'd arrived in a hurry and immediately blocked Du Xiaofu's sure-kill sword light. Long time no see. Jiangchen's golden growler slowly transformed into a man in his 30s. He smiled at Du Xiaofu. Indeed, long time no see. Du Xiaofu smiled back. The last time Jiangchen appeared was in the Tomb of Eternity. It had been a long time since then. Now that they'd met again, Jiangchen seemed to have grown much stronger. However, Jiangchen still couldn't see through him. "These two are useful to me," said Jiangchen. "I hope you can let them go. I'll owe you a favor." When Du Xiaofu heard this, his eyes narrowed slightly. But then he smiled and casually tossed the Qi Li and Qi Huang to the ground. "Since you asked, I won't ask too much. There's no reason to not let them go." Ever since they'd met, Jiangchen had indeed helped him a lot. The friendship between the two of them was not shallow. No matter the reason, Du Xiaofu would give him face. He was just a bit curious. Did Dongli Qi Huang and Shen Yan have some kind of relationship with Jiangchen? However, Jiangchen had always been mysterious and elusive. It made sense that he couldn't talk about his private matters. Chapter 25:17. Actually, I can't quite put my finger on it. I just have a vague feeling that these two are somehow related to me. Jiangchen's gaze swept over Dongli Qi Huang and Shen Yan, a hint of confusion on his face. Du Xiaofu nodded. Even Jiangchen himself didn't seem to know Jiangchen's exact identity and origins. Perhaps it really was some sort of vague feeling towards Dongli Qi Huang and Shen Yan. That's why he'd hurried over just as they were about to be killed. "I believe you." Du Xiaofu smiled, then fell silent. He saw Jiangchen as a friend and wasn't willing to dig deeper. The conversation between the two of them was heard by everyone. Dongli Qi Huang crawled up from the ground in a sorry state. He suddenly realized that he might have escaped another calamity today. The sense of failure in his heart was instantly suppressed by a gratuitous joy. However, the flames of hope that had just been ignited were doused with a bucket of cold water by Shen Yan's next words. "What do you want to do to us?" Shen Yan's gaze was distant as he asked Jiangchen in a low voice, his voice filled with deep fear. They naturally knew of Jiangchen's ferocious reputation. However, they and Dongli Qi Huang had no relationship with him. He couldn't possibly help them without reason. If he had ulterior motives, then their fates wouldn't be any better than being killed by Du Xiaofu. "If you don't want to die, then come with me obediently." Jiangchen frowned, glared at Shen Yan, and responded coldly. After that, light surged on his palm, and then a strand of force erupted and struck Shen Yan. After a slight buzzing sound, the enchantment set up by Du Xiaofu was directly lifted. Shen Yan grimaced in pain and straightened his body. "All right, I agree to go with you. As long as I don't die at Du Xiaofu's hands, even if I have to face hell and 10,000 tribulations in the future, I'm willing to endure them." Shen Yan enunciated each word clearly, his expression terrifying. "All right. I also agree to go with you." Hearing these words, Dongli Qi Huang also opened his mouth. He turned to look at Du Xiaofu again, his eyes erupting with hatred. "Du Xiaofu, as long as we don't die, there will be a day when I will personally chop off your head." In the face of Dongli Qi Huang's provocation, Du Xiaofu sneered and suddenly pushed the purple-gold heavenly tower into the void. With a boom, the tip of the sword seemed to have struck the thick ground, emitting a thunderous sound. Cracks exploded in the void, like a watermelon that was exposed to the scorching sun, bursting open. Du Xiaofu's black hair fluttered in the wind as he fearlessly said, "Du Xiaofu, we'll teach you any time." Jiangchen could only shake his head and smile bitterly at their tit-for-tat. After that, he waved his hand at Du Xiaofu and said, "Thank you for this. I will definitely repay this favor in the future. Won't you come to the desolate nation for a visit?" When he saw that Jiangchen intended to leave, Du Xiaofu urged him to stay. Given Jiangchen's current strength, he couldn't see through him at all. If he was willing to help the desolate nation, then in the upcoming battle against the devil religion, he'd undoubtedly gain a great deal of help. "No, I still have a few things to investigate. I want to know the answer as soon as possible." Jiangchen raised his head slightly and gazed into the distance, somewhat lost in thought. Du Xiaofu had long since expected this answer. He didn't say anything else. He simply cupped his hands at Jiangchen. Then take care. I hope you'll be able to find out the final result soon. Jiangchen smiled, then opened his hand. Strength swept out, capturing Dongli Qihuang and Shen Yan. He said to Du Xiaofu, "Let's go." With a leap, he disappeared into the void, disappearing without a trace. He'd come quickly and left decisively, without the slightest hesitation. Was that person just now the zombie you spoke of? Han Ji strolled over to Du Xiaofu's side and asked softly. Du Xiaofu nodded. A mysterious and unfathomable fellow. Your relationship doesn't seem ordinary either. Han Ji said with a faint smile. Du Xiaofu nodded again. Then, he turned to Soul Concubine and flashed her 2 rows of shiny teeth. He squeezed out a meaningful and wretched smile. Actually, our relationship is the real deal. Han Ji was momentarily at a loss for words. She'd actually been taken advantage of in a moment of carelessness. This scene inwardly delighted Du Xiaofu. Who told you to tease me time and time again? This time, I've finally gotten back some face. However, Du Xiaofu had miscalculated. Han Ji was only slightly stunned for a moment. Then, her bright eyes curved and she giggled. She stuck out her 2 pure white breasts and swayed her perky waist as she walked over to Du Xiaofu's side. Then, she gently held Du Xiaofu's arm. Her 2 soft lumps were squeezed until they changed shape and protruded outwards as if they were about to jump out of her lapels. The cleavage also became deeper. Wisps of fragrance burrowed into Du Xiaofu's nose. It was intoxicating. Han Ji's rosy lips moved closer to Du Xiaofu's ear. She gently blew into his ear and said with a smile, "Actually, I feel that our relationship can be even deeper and more extraordinary." This sentence, Du Xiaofu immediately understood. His scalp went numb, and in an instant, all the hair on his body stood on end. This woman was really capable of saying anything. The worst thing was that there was a fucking movement somewhere. This was too fucking disappointing. Let's hurry up and get going. Du Xiaofu's little mouth trembled. He did not dare to stay any longer. In a flash, he jumped into the distance and fled in panic like a stray dog. Compared to Dongli Qingqing, Sima Muhan, Qi Yi Shi and the other young girls, this woman in front of him really killed without spilling blood. He, looking at Du Xiaofu's embarrassing state, Han Ji covered her mouth and laughed. Her delicate body trembled slightly, and her pair of plump breasts trembled along with it, forming a moving arc. "Little brat, you're still too inexperienced to fight with me." Amidst her laughter, Han Ji also unfolded her body and followed behind Du Xiaofu. Seeing this scene, Ji Qianyue, Ren Yuan, Sun Qin and the other young experts of the human race looked at each other and were speechless for a long time. Lu Mingmo let out a long sigh and turned to look at his elder sister. His handsome face was full of seriousness as he said earnestly, "Elder sister, you must have a sense of crisis." Lu Limo was stunned by her brother's baffling words and did not recover for a long time. Our human emperor is indeed extraordinary to be able to obtain the favor of so many girls. Yao Tianwu opened his mouth and explained in a timely manner. Lu Limo was smart and immediately understood what her brother meant. Her beautiful face could not help but turn red. "Little brat, are you looking for a beating?" Lu Limo raised her eyebrows. This brother of hers was asking her to take the initiative to chase after Du Xiaofu. Although she was reprimanding Lu Mingmo, Lu Limo's eyes unconsciously drifted to Sun Qin and Jiang Yiting. It was as if she was asking, "Do you also have a sense of crisis?" Chapter 25:18. Sun Qin and Jiang Yiting blushed under Lu Limo's gaze. Their faces were filled with anger and they almost scolded, "If you want to throw yourself into his arms, then go ahead. Why are you dragging us down with you?" Feng Wuxia glanced at the beautiful ladies and rubbed his nose. He stared at them and said, I think I know something. You guys are confessing. I think we might be single for the rest of our lives if we follow behind the Rock Emperor. Lu Limo's face was filled with sorrow and pain. Ren Yuan, Yao Tianwu, the number one hero, and the others nodded their heads to express their agreement. They were all outstanding talents of the human tribe. However, they were overshadowed by Du Xiaofu, the new human emperor. The most beautiful women of the human race seemed to have taken a liking to him, and their hearts seemed to have fallen for him. This was too much of a blow to them. Ji Qianyue, who was standing at the side, reached out and ran her fingers through her flowing red hair. Her eyes shone with a strange light. She did not have much contact with Du Xiaofu. Most of her knowledge of him was from hearsay. She did not know what was going on. Why are you still talking so much? Let's go. Lu Limo straightened her expression and suppressed her emotions as she said in a serious tone. Then, her petite body began to move. She transformed into a beautiful shadow and dashed into the distance. Sun Qin and Jiang Yiting also followed closely behind. At this moment, I feel a deep sense of danger. Feng Wuxia sighed and said with a bitter smile. After that, everyone did not delay any longer. They all turned into flowing lights and disappeared into the dark sky. For the rest of the time, Du Xiaofu and the rest were not in a hurry to travel. However, on the third day, they finally returned to the land of Kyushu and entered the territory of Ningzhou. The distance to the desolate country could be considered to be very close. The devil religion's actions have become more frequent recently. At the front of the group, Du Xiaofu said with narrowed eyes as he hurried forward. In the past few days, they had encountered several forces of the demonic sect along the way. These people from the devil religion hadn't killed too many people on the surface. However, Du Xiaofu knew that they were only rapidly expanding in the dark to build an even stronger force. When the time was right, it would turn into a sharp blade in the hands of the Fiend Celestial. Under the command of the 9 Fiend Celestial Emperors, it would bring endless blood and misery to this world. All over Kyushu, there should be corresponding forces to deal with the expansion of the devil religion. Soul Concubine pursed her lips and said, but as long as the devil religion doesn't give up, there will definitely be a large-scale clash. She was now considered a member of Du Xiaofu's faction, so she naturally had a good understanding of the devil religion. Bloodshed is unavoidable because the devil religion won't give up on killing. Du Xiaofu said in a low voice. In the primordial era, the devil religion provoked the dragon phoenix calamity and plunged the entire world into chaos. Countless living beings died in battle. If not for the Du family's ancestors, who were the heavenly Tao, taking action in the end, this world would probably have been controlled by the devil religion. Now that they had made a comeback, it was impossible for them to be merciful. What do you plan to do next? Soul Concubine asked. Du Xiaofu pondered for a moment and said, the devil religion is ferocious, and the Fiend Celestial is incomparably powerful. Only with the power of all living beings in this world can we resist them. However, right now, some forces, including the dragons and the 9 great families, still want to stay out of this. Some are even thinking of cooperating with the devil religion to protect themselves. These forces that have the tendency to collude with the devil religion cannot be allowed to continue acting so wantonly. Otherwise, in the upcoming calamity, not only will they not be able to help the living beings of this world, they might even stab us in the back at any time. So? Soul Concubine asked. So, I plan to visit them one by one. It's best if they're obedient, but if they still refuse to come to their senses, then, Du Xiaofu's expression became serious. His eyes flashed with purple gold light and murderous aura. Then I'll have to beat them up one by one. I'll beat them until they're really in pain. Then I'll teach them how to behave in a pleasant manner. If they continue to be stubborn, then we might as well just eliminate them. Since they refuse to contribute to the common people, we can't allow them to become a great threat to this world. Soul Concubine's gaze was gloomy as she looked at Du Xiaofu's resolute profile. His words were filled with unparalleled dominance, and she couldn't help but feel a little dazed. A moment later, Soul Concubine also realized that she had lost her composure. She puffed out her magnificent chest and said with a smile, "If there's anything you need me to do, just tell me. I'm willing to drink blood for you without hesitation." Du Xiaofu was extremely embarrassed when he heard this. But then, he nodded seriously. Although Soul Concubine's words contained a hint of teasing, Du Xiaofu knew in his heart that this woman with peerless strength should be sincerely willing to help him now. "We'll reach the desolate country very soon. At that time, with you overseeing the stone city, I'll be much more at ease," Du Xiaofu said. "You're going to meet those major forces right away?" Soul Concubine asked. Du Xiaofu grunted in acknowledgement. "Let's do it one by one. Let's start with the dragons. The demon god may fully recover at any time. The situation is urgent, and I don't have much time to slowly plan. After these things are settled, there are still many forces in the 3 continents and Kyushu that need to be integrated. We have to do it quickly." As Du Xiaofu spoke, he was thinking about many things in his heart. While organizing the dragons, the 9 great families, and other forces, he had to do his best to find the 36 spiritual thunders and the 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons. In addition, the forces in Tianhuang mainland, the demon world, and other forces had to be integrated step by step. He wanted to eradicate all the internal problems in this world before the demon god fully recovered. At that time, countless living beings would be united and it would be much easier to deal with the devil religion. The final enemy was still the invincible god-fiend in this world. "Your desolate country has a group of country guardian divine envoys. After I go there, shouldn't you also give me a title?" Soul Concubine's lips and teeth opened slightly, and her beautiful eyes flickered with a cunning light. "No problem at all. You can choose any title you want." Du Xiaofu waved his hand and said heroically. To be able to exchange a title for the help of such an expert, this transaction couldn't be any more worthwhile. However, Soul Concubine's next sentence made Du Xiaofu feel like he had been deceived. "Well, I don't really care about those empty titles. It's just that you, the Rock Emperor, haven't conferred the title of Empress yet, right? Why don't?" Du Xiaofu was so scared that his face turned ashen. He rubbed his forehead helplessly. He had unknowingly fallen into a trap. If he really gave Soul Concubine such a title, wouldn't it mean that he had something to do with her? At that time, wouldn't that tomboy Ouyang Shuang? Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but clamp his legs together. He felt a chill somewhere. Chapter 25:19 Du Xiaofu Desolate Country, Stone City. In the Grand Hall, waves of Imperial Palace Dragon Qi swirled around, exuding a vast and majestic aura. Du Xiaofu sat at the head of the table. Beside him were Elder Yi, First Uncle, Second Uncle, Moron Yorua, and the other leaders of the desolate country. In addition, Hun Ji, Feng Wuxia, Jiang Yiting, Ren Yuan, and the other experts from the ancient desolate continent were also seated. "Xiaofu, you've just returned and you're in a hurry to go out again?" First Uncle Du Zhenmu asked. Du Xiaofu nodded and said, "There are many things that need to be done quickly. We don't have time to waste. Yes, now that the devil religion is expanding, your father and sacred array child Jin Qingchun have also brought people to various places to deal with various matters. Almost all the experts above the Saint Realm in the desolate country have left. Only Xiaoba, Xiaohuang, Xiaolin, and Shuang are left," Yi Wuming continued. After the tomb of heavenly Tao opened, the power of the world had surged. With the support of countless resources from the desolate country, his cultivation had reached the master domain level of the martial domain realm. He was not too far away from the Saint Realm. Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across First Uncle, Second Uncle, and the others. He realized that they had also reached the domain realm. He couldn't help but feel overjoyed. Send someone to find out where little star went. Once there's a result, inform me immediately. I have to find her as soon as possible and then we can go to the Four Seas Dragons together, Du Xiaofu said again. Yi Wuming nodded and said, I'll send someone to do it right away. Other than that, have Xiaolin make a trip to the Tianhuang continent and integrate the desolate leopard and other beasts. In the upcoming war, this force cannot be ignored, Du Xiaofu continued to instruct. At the same time, outside the main hall, two young children, a boy, a girl, and a little beast poked their heads out and hid in the dark to eavesdrop. These three little guys were none other than Du Xiaoba, Du Xiaohuang, and Du Xiaolin. When Du Xiaofu finished speaking, Du Xiaolin's pair of bright eyes became even more resplendent, and the corner of his mouth raised into a Kylin-like smile. He was in high spirits. Du Xiaoba and Du Xiaohuang, on the other hand, looked at Du Xiaolin hopefully at the same time, and then they each pointed at their noses and silently mouthed to Du Xiaolin, Take me, take me. The little Qilin looked at Du Xiaoba and then looked at Du Xiaohuang. It blinked its big eyes a few times, and its immature little face showed an embarrassed expression. Upon hearing Du Xiaofu's words, second uncle Du Zhixiong asked worriedly, Will little Lin be in danger if he doesn't accompany you to Tianhuang mainland? Don't worry, second uncle. The beasts of Tianhuang mainland respect Qilins to begin with. Now that little Qilin is born, it's something that they have been yearning for since ancient times. Du Xiaofu said, Little Lin definitely won't run into any obstacles this time. Those experts of the beast race have indeed been restricted for too long. Hearing that, Du Zhixiong nodded and said, Those words make sense. Then let little Shuang accompany little Lin, so that she can take care of the little fellow. Of course. Du Xiaofu agreed readily and continued, Let Xiaoba and Xiaohuang, the two brats, come along too, so that they don't stay at home and cause trouble. Du Xiaoba and Du Xiaohuang, who were hiding outside the main hall, heard that and were immediately delighted. Dad, I love you to death. Du Xiaohuang waved her little fists and said excitedly. Shoo, Du Xiaoba hurriedly covered her mouth and made a shushing gesture. This scene naturally could not escape Du Xiaofu's perception. Everyone in the main hall also burst into laughter, amused by the children's adorable behavior. However, Du Xiaofu's decision also made Du Zhenwu, Du Zhixiong and the others feel much more relieved. Although the three children were young, each of them had a terrifying cultivation of the Saint Realm. Coupled with little Shuang's accompaniment, as long as they did not encounter experts like the 9 great demon emperors of the devil religion, there would basically be no problems. The dragons are a tough nut to crack. This trip will definitely be a fierce battle. I'll have to trouble Yi Lao to send a message to Yi Piaoling and the 18,000 ancient Jade brothers. Tell them to rush to the Four Seas and meet up with us. Du Xiaofu said. Understood. Yi Wuming nodded. The group continued to discuss matters related to the barren country, the devil religion and other related matters. As for Ji Qianyue, Sun Qin, number 1 hero and a dozen other young experts, Du Xiaofu directly grabbed able-bodied men and arranged a difficult task for them, to guide the cultivation of some of the outstanding children in the barren country. Almost all of the barren country's Saint Realm experts were busy outside and had no time to do this. Now that they had these coolies, it would be a waste not to use them. With the strength of these young experts, it would be more than enough to guide a group of barren country's disciples. However, these people had come out of the ancient wilderness continent to gain experience and seek higher breakthroughs. Du Xiaofu could not let them rot in the barren country forever. After they completed their task, Yi Lao and the others arranged for them to help the barren country deal with the devil religion. As for Hun Ji, Du Xiaofu planned to let her guard the barren country. With her strength not inferior to his, even if the 9 great demon emperors attacked the barren country together, she would be able to resist for a period of time with her own strength. This arrangement also allowed all of the barren country's Saint Realm experts to be free of worries and deal with the devil religion with peace of mind. After half a day, all of the tasks were carefully explained and everyone dispersed. Du Xiaofu went to the courtyard where his mother lived alone and found that she was still in seclusion. However, from the powerful aura that his mother unconsciously emitted when she was cultivating, Du Xiaofu was pleasantly surprised to find that her attainments in talisman Taoism had actually made a terrifying breakthrough. Before his mother had gone into seclusion, he had given her the mysterious incomplete cultivation technique. After reading it, his mother had exclaimed, "Extraordinary," and immediately went into seclusion. He did not expect that after returning from the ancient wilderness fearsome lands, she had made such a terrifying improvement. Not wanting to disturb his mother's cultivation, Du Xiaofu exclaimed in surprise and turned to leave quietly. It seems that our Du family will soon have another Saint Realm talisman master. Du Xiaofu muttered to himself and smiled happily. His mother's breakthrough was also due to the increase in the overall strength of the Du family and the barren country. In the upcoming calamity, they would have more power to protect themselves. This was just as he had hoped. Thinking back, the motivation for his hard work in cultivation was so that his family of 4 could be reunited. Now, all of his efforts were to protect the people behind him, his family, friends, loved ones, and people. There was one similarity between the two. That was, the enemies that Du Xiaofu faced were much stronger than him. Only with enough strength could one shoulder the heavy burden on one's shoulders. The only difference was that Du Xiaofu now had countless helpers and followers. He no longer needed to face everything alone and fight alone. Chapter 25-20. The sea was vast and boundless. A purple-robed young man walked on the waves, his body rising and falling with the waves. He seemed to have become one with the sea. The young man was holding the hand of a 7- or 8-year-old girl. There was a strange mark on the girl's forehead. It flickered with a cold light, appearing a bit demonic. These two people were Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing, who were preparing to head to the dragons. "Dad, should the dragons be hiding under the sea?" Little Xingxing asked Du Xiaofu. "Everyone knows that the dragons reside in the 4 seas, but it's probably not so easy for people to find out where their nest is. So, I'm afraid we'll have to investigate a little more," Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Then, he turned to look at little Xingxing and asked, "The purest azure dragon bloodline flows in your body. Can you sense the aura of the dragons?" Little Xingxing nodded, then shook her head. "I feel a bit close to this place. I can vaguely sense some things. It's just that this sea is too vast. I really can't confirm the exact location of the dragons." Du Xiaofu nodded, indicating that he understood. Little Xingxing had the azure dragon and vermilion bird bloodlines in her body. She was completely above the dragons and phoenixes. However, the 4 seas were vast and boundless. It was normal that she could only sense some things. At the very least, it was better than Du Xiaofu's feeling of nothing. "Let's go down and take a look. Your Uncle Yi Piaoling and the others haven't arrived yet. Why don't we go and scout the way first?" As Du Xiaofu spoke, he dived downwards, bringing little Xingxing with him into the sea. A vast aura rippled from his body, isolating the sea water outside. It was as if they were in a big bubble. "There's a cold, murderous aura deep in the sea," Du Xiaofu said. As the two of them continued to descend, the light became darker and darker. In the sparkling waves, countless corals and seaweeds swayed with the waves. Du Xiaofu felt that the environment in the sea was getting colder and colder. This kind of coldness was different from the pure coldness of frigid snow seal. Instead, it carried the intent of ecstasy in corroding the bones, affecting one's primordial spirit and physical body. If one was not a creature of the sea, even if one had reached the martial emperor realm, one would still be greatly affected. However, with Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing's cultivation, they could completely disregard this kind of cold fiendish qi. I'll go find a stronger creature and ask. Little Star said. Du Xiaofu nodded in agreement. The power of his primordial spirit spread out and enveloped an area of tens of thousands of kilometers under the sea. Hee, something interesting is happening 1,000 miles ahead. Let's go and have a look. Du Xiaofu couldn't help but smile at the feedback he received from the power of his essence soul. After that, the two of them flew off into the distance. Countless fishes, turtles, prawns, and crabs swam past him. Many of them were emitting a hazy glow and were extremely beautiful. However, these creatures were extremely weak and couldn't pose any threat to Du Xiaofu and Little Star at all. Moreover, the aura that the two of them emitted and their incomparably swift speed made them unconsciously fearful. They all hid in the distance and didn't dare to get close. We're here. In less than half an hour, Du Xiaofu had already brought Little Star to an underwater mountain range. This underwater mountain range stretched for 1,000 miles and was covered in patches of underwater plants. In the depths of the mountain range, there were a few strong underwater creatures gathered. At that moment, the conversation between the creatures had also reached Du Xiaofu and Little Star's ears. Bei Luan, hand over Shui Lian and I'll let you go today. A strange creature of the sea tribe said. This creature's words were filled with a strong threat. He had transformed into a human form and looked like a young man in his 30s. It was just that its round head and hairless head looked very strange. What was even more surprising was that his torso was like a cylinder. His 8 arms were wrapped around his neck and were extremely long. They were like tentacles that swayed up and down. Shifu, don't go too far. At most, we'll fight to the death today. Another young man with 2 shells on his head said angrily. He was also in human form. In his right hand, he held a trident that was as tall as a person. It was suffused with a ferocious aura. In his left hand, he was holding the hand of a young woman with sparkling and translucent skin. She was beautiful and charming. Seeing such a 3-headed creature, Little Star couldn't help but open his mouth. Father, what kind of creatures are these 3? They look too strange. Hey, that one with a circle of hands under his head should be from the Dead Cow clan, which is what we often call the octopus or the octopus. Du Xiaofu pursed his lips and continued, the one with 2 tiles on his head must be a shell-type creature. Then, that woman with skin that is so tender that it's almost transparent, what kind of clan is she? Little Star continued to ask. Du Xiaofu chuckled. That should be a jellyfish. She's really beautiful. No wonder those 2 men are fighting for her and even look like they want to perish together. As Du Xiaofu and Little Star spoke, they stood not far away from the 3 of them and commented on them. They didn't lower their voices at all and naturally, the other party heard what they said. Who's the one pointing fingers here? Are you tired of living? The octopus man called Shifu turned his head and stared at Du Xiaofu and Little Star with his 2 eyes embedded in his bald head. His 8 arms were constantly moving as if he was ready to attack at any time. At the same time, Bei Luan, who was a shell-type creature, also frowned and looked at Du Xiaofu. Obviously, their pointing and gossiping had provoked public indignation. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? I think you're the one who's tired of living. As the Purple Dragon Emperor, Little Star had never been afraid of trouble and instantly rebutted him. If it weren't for Du Xiaofu holding him back, he probably would have punched the octopus into pieces. Humans. Could they be humans? The jellyfish, who had transformed into a ripple, covered her small mouth and her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. That's right, we are humans. Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Audacious humans. How dare you come to my sea to behave so atrociously and spout nonsense here? Then, you shall leave your life here. Little Star's words infuriated Shifu, and with a loud roar, it moved. 8 arms shot out, like 8 long whips, toward Du Xiaofu and Little Star. The tyrannical power surged, causing the sea to churn violently and creating a whistling sound at the bottom of the sea. "Be careful." Bei Luan saw this and immediately cried out in alarm, reminding Du Xiaofu to dodge. However, Du Xiaofu only frowned and did not make any move to meet the enemy. Shi Fu was also a beast-revered realm cultivator and could be considered to be not bad. However, this level of cultivation was not enough to catch Su Mo's attention. He only felt that this person was too domineering. He wanted to kill him just because of a disagreement. Did he really think that Su Mo was a soft persimmon? "Humph, you overestimate yourself." Little Star snorted coldly. He stood where he was and directly stretched out a small hand toward Shi Fu. A terrifying force erupted, forming a spiral that twisted Shi Fu's 8 whips together. Little Xingxing held them in his hands like a hemp rope. Then, Little Xingxing tugged gently, and after a few puff, puff, puff sounds, the 8 arms were cut off. "Ah!" Shi Fu screamed and retreated in a panic. Scarlet blood gushed out and dyed the surrounding seawater a crimson color. This, Bei Luan and Shui Lian looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. That little girl from the human race had crippled Shi Fu with a casual move. This was too terrifying. "If you dare to hurt me, my Dead Ox clan will not let you off." Shi Fu roared loudly. A huge octopus appeared, but all of its tentacles had been cut off. He shouted and roared non-stop. At the same time, he unleashed his beast-revered realm cultivation and quickly fled into the distance. The seawater was stirred up with a "hoyalu" sound, causing monstrous waves to rise on the surface of the sea in this area. On the side, Bei Luan and Shui Lian's bodies also swayed along with him. Du Xiaofu did not stop him and allowed him to leave. "Dad, do you want to keep him? I haven't eaten an octopus before. I wonder how it tastes." Little Star grabbed the 8 huge octopus claws, her big eyes emitting green light. The violently tumbling sea water did not even make her small body tremble. "I haven't eaten it before either. I'll try it when I have the chance." Du Xiaofu smiled and said, "But one may not be enough. Didn't that guy say that he would call the Dead Ox clan to come and kill us? If they really dare to come, we'll take them all. If we can't finish them, we can bring them back for Lil Ba and Lil Huang to have a taste." Little Star nodded and deeply felt that this was a wonderful idea. Shi Fu left in a sorry state, and the boundless waves slowly subsided. Bei Luan and Shui Lian also steadied themselves. Du Xiaofu smiled and cast his gaze over. His smiling face caused the young man and woman of the sea race to shiver. "Which one of you can tell me how to go to the dragons?" Du Xiaofu asked. The purpose of his trip was to enter the dragons, and he did not want to waste too much time here. Furthermore, the cultivations of these people could also be considered to be quite impressive. Therefore, he should be able to obtain some useful information by asking them. "Dragons? You want to go to the dragons?" Bei Luan's body trembled when he heard this. To see tribe creatures like them, the dragons were a supreme existence. They were terrifyingly powerful and were the kings of the 4 seas. "If you know, please tell me. I thank you in advance." Du Xiaofu said very politely. He was not an arrogant person, and it was impossible for him to attack those 2 for no reason. Seeing that Du Xiaofu was so easy to talk to, Bei Luan also calmed down a little and said, "I've only heard that the dragons reside in the Nirvana Dragon Abyss, but I don't know where the Nirvana Dragon Abyss is. That kind of existence is not something that we can come into contact with." He was clear in his heart that these 2 humans definitely had a great background for them to be associated with the dragon race. The Nirvana Dragon Abyss. Du Xiaofu was silent. When he was in the outside world, he had only heard that the dragons resided in the 4 seas, but he had never heard of the Nirvana Dragon Abyss. The sea was so vast, and he had no idea where to start looking for it on his own. Perhaps, he would only be able to obtain the information he wanted from the mouths of those powerful beings. "Father, that arrogant octopus just now might come back. Should we wait here? Little Xingxing pondered and said. Her meaning was clear. If Shi Fu came back, he would definitely bring a group of powerhouses from the dead ox tribe with him and capture them. Presumably, powerful sea creatures would know the location of the Nirvana Dragon Abyss. Du Xiaofu felt that it made sense and felt that this method was very feasible. However, Balin said with fear, Sir, you'd better leave quickly. Shi Fu is the young genius of the dead ox tribe, and he is favored by the half-saint ancestor. Now that he has been crippled, with the vengeful nature of the ancestor, he will surely be furious and even come to deal with you personally. Oh. A half-saint ancestor. Du Xiaofu curled up the corners of his mouth. He didn't expect that the dead ox tribe was not weak, and they actually had a half-saint powerhouse. If it was an ordinary sea tribe, they would be very afraid of such a powerhouse. Unfortunately, the people who had crippled Shi Fu were the Demon King, Du Xiaofu, and the Purple Dragon Emperor, Little Star. If that half-saint octopus really dared to come, it would only end up being sacrificed to the temple of its internal organs. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu and Little Star couldn't help but feel a little expectant, as if they saw delicious food waving at them. Come, come, come. Let's try this 8-legged octopus first. Du Xiaofu took Shi Fu's 8 tentacles from Little Star. Each of them was as thick as an adult's arm and about 10 meters long. They were incomparably sturdy. I'll go find firewood to start a fire. Little Star was also excited and instantly jumped into the distance. Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged on the ground, and an even more powerful force surged out of his body, repelling all the seawater within 10 meters around him, forming a large space that was enough for him to use his fists and feet. After that, he washed the 8 octopus hands and took out a large cauldron, a grill, seasoning, and other things from his cosmos bag. In a short while, Little Star had already returned, dragging a large pile of seaweed, corals, and other plants, like a small mountain. Little Star used his profound qi to evaporate the water in these plants, turning them into flammable firewood, and quickly started a fire. Du Xiaofu roasted the pot together, his movements skillful. Not long after, bursts of meat fragrance drifted in the small space. It smells so good. Little Star twitched his nose and drooled. Come and try it. Du Xiaofu handed a thin sword to Little Star, on which there was a section of octopus wrist that glowed with oil. The fragrance of the meat was mixed with the smell of cumin and pepper. Little Star took it and began to chew. His eyes narrowed into a line, and he enjoyed it very much. Let me try the taste of the pot. Du Xiaofu picked up a big piece of meat from the big cauldron and threw it into his mouth. After chewing a few times, he let out a "oh" sound and praised, "It's delicious. The texture is really good, it's chewy." Little Star threw down the thin sword, which had been eaten clean of meat, and picked up a piece from the pot. He held it in his hand and called out to Bei Luan and Shui Lian, "Do you want to try it too?" Not far away, Bei Luan and Shui Lian were dumbfounded. Due to the isolation of the seawater, they could not smell the fragrance of the meat. They could only see the 2 humans eating enthusiastically. They knew that these 2 people were very strong, at least in the martial field realm. They were too bold, daring to roast and eat the dead cow clan. Sir, you'd better leave quickly. If you're too late. Shui Lian did not finish her sentence. There was a hint of anxiousness in her words, but it was easy to understand what she meant. If the old ancestor of the half-saint realm chased them here and happened to see this scene, he would not let them go so easily. At that time, these 2 humans would not be able to leave even if they wanted to. Du Xiaofu swallowed a piece of fragrant roast meat, nodded, and said to Bei Luan and Shui Lian, "That's right, you'd better leave quickly, lest you get into more trouble." These 2 sea tribe members seemed to be quite kind, and he did not want to implicate them. "Sir, you." Bei Luan also spoke. "Don't worry about us, leave quickly. If you don't leave, I'll roast and eat you together." Du Xiaofu said without lifting his eyelids. Bei Luan and Shui Lian trembled in fear at the same time. If it's the seashells, they should be braised with hot peppers. The taste should be pretty good. Little Star casually agreed. The two sea tribe members were so scared that their faces turned green. They did not dare to delay any longer. They did not even say goodbye and quickly swam away into the distance. Such an outcome made Du Xiaofu and Little Star unable to hold back their laughter. They looked at each other and laughed loudly. My father is indeed the Demon King. Look at how scared the child is. Little Star teased. Your father is indeed the Demon King, but you can also be considered a little Demon King. Du Xiaofu retorted. This name is not bad. I'll use it in the future. It's not inferior to the Purple Dragon Emperor's name. Little Star gladly accepted. The father and daughter pair ate heartily as they bickered. By the time he was almost done eating, a group of people had really come to surround and kill him. There were more than 100 people in this group, and all of them had strange shapes. They were similar to Shifu from before, and all of them had 8 arms under their necks, forming a circle. As soon as they arrived, they saw the large cauldron and grill in front of Du Xiaofu and Little Star, as well as some remaining octopus tentacles. They were instantly enraged. Audacious humans, you actually dare to injure the younger generation of my clan, and eat my dead cow clan. I'll kill you. At the front, an old man pointed at Du Xiaofu and Little Star and cursed loudly. He was gasping for breath as he spoke, and it was obvious that he was extremely angry. This old man's face was haggard and hairless, and his eye sockets were sunken. He looked extremely like an old monk who was about to die. Beside him, a young man who had lost all his limbs glared angrily, and he wished for nothing more than to kill the two humans with his gaze. Du Xiaofu burped as if he had just noticed the arrival of this group of people. He rubbed his round belly and beamed with joy. Ah, not bad. So many octopus came again. It's enough for our whole family to eat for a long time. Little Star seemed to have eaten too much. She propped herself up from the ground with difficulty, and her little head nodded incessantly. She even casually put away the remaining octopus tentacles into her cosmos bag. Through their perception, the father and daughter also noticed that the old man in the lead was a half-saint expert. Human kid, you're too arrogant. Do you think my sea is a place where you can behave atrociously? The old man was furious, and he immediately charged towards Du Xiaofu. His 8 extremely thick arms waved wildly, and his killing intent soared. His half-saint cultivation erupted, causing the sea to boil, the ground at the bottom of the sea to collapse, and sand to surge. Du Xiaofu stood still and didn't resist. He allowed his body to be entangled by the old man. Kid, die. The old man shouted loudly. The suckers that were the size of millstones on the 8 tentacles emitted dazzling light. The tentacles moved, and boundless force swept out with the intention of mincing Du Xiaofu into pieces. But very quickly, the old man's movements froze. He realized that no matter how much force he exerted, he couldn't move the young human at all. This couldn't help but make him feel greatly alarmed. Saint Realm! The old man exclaimed in horror. He finally realized how terrifying this young man was. Run, it's a Saint Realm expert! The old man exclaimed. He immediately retracted his 8 arms and wanted to escape. Hundreds of dead Bull Clan experts trembled with fear when they heard this. They didn't need to think anymore. They all turned around and wanted to leave. At the same time, a series of muffled sounds rang out, like firecrackers being set off. Plumes of black smoke rose from the buttocks of these people, and quickly dyed the sea water black. While it blurred their vision, it also carried a terrifying killing intent. However, these people's figures had just rushed out for less than 5 feet when they suddenly stopped. Everyone, including the half-saint old man, only felt that the surrounding sea water seemed to have solidified, and they couldn't pass through it at all. "Why are you running? Isn't it better to stay and be our food?" Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Powerful energy erupted from his body and repelled the polluted sea water around the Dead Bull clan experts. "How dare you fart? So disgusting." Little Xingxing pinched his nose and didn't want to go near those people. Du Xiaofu walked to the half-saint old man and asked, "You should know where the Nirvana Dragon Abyss is. Take us there and I'll spare your lives today." He still had important matters to attend to, and he didn't want to waste too much time here. The old man was stunned on the spot. Only now did he truly realize exactly what sort of terrifying figure he'd offended, and he couldn't arouse the slightest thought of resisting or fleeing any longer. Nirvana Dragon Abyss? This. Faced with Du Xiaofu's question, he was stunned for a long time, and fear appeared in his old eyes. "What, you don't want to?" Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and asked. The old man hurriedly waved his hand and said, My lord, that is the habitat of the dragons. You. What do you want to do there? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." Little Xingxing put on a fierce face and said coldly. The half-saint old man of the Dead Bull clan immediately shrank back in fear. Then, he asked suspiciously, "My lord, if I take you there, will you really spare us?" The old man's legs trembled. Although he was very afraid of the dragons, he didn't have any other choice at the moment. He could only pray that this human would keep his promise. "I'll do as I say," Du Xiaofu said. In this regard, the old man could only nod in agreement. "Let's go quickly. If you dilly-dally, I'll eat you," Little Xingxing shouted. The old man didn't dare to hesitate any longer. He immediately took the two people and swam in a direction. Du Xiaofu didn't make things difficult for the rest of the Dead Bull clan and let them go directly. Chapter 25-21. Du Xiaofu and Little Xingxing traveled swiftly under the guidance of the half-saint ancestor of the Death Bull clan. They spent a lot of time traversing millions of miles of sea. Du Xiaofu was shocked to discover that the area of this sea was probably much larger than the entire 3 continents and 9 prefectures combined. There were also countless powerful clans in the sea. Just like the living beings on land, they ruled in all directions. Du Xiaofu didn't want to provoke them rashly. He estimated that Yi Piaoling, Qian Guyu, and the others should have reached the 4 seas by now. However, he didn't need to wait for them. It was a piece of cake for the 18 celestial guards to find the Nirvana Dragon Abyss with their abilities. Since the 3 of them didn't open a space tunnel to travel, it took them half a day to finally reach a mountain range at the bottom of the sea. When Du Xiaofu probed with the power of soul, he discovered that there was an enormous mountain range a few thousand kilometers ahead. At that moment, the old man from the Death Ox clan also stopped his footsteps. He was unwilling to continue onward. "My lords, there is a canyon in the mountain ahead. I heard that there is an endless canyon there. It is the Nirvana Dragon Abyss, the place where the dragons reside." The elder said respectfully to Du Xiaofu and Little Xingxing, "Please forgive me for only being able to send you off here." As he spoke, he secretly glanced at the 2 of them. He looked very cautious, afraid that the 2 saints would be dissatisfied. "Your mission is complete. You can go now." Du Xiaofu waved his hand casually and motioned for the elder to leave. He didn't have any deep enmity with the elder, so he didn't want to make things difficult for him. However, Du Xiaofu's reaction stunned the half-saint elder for a moment. He didn't expect this human youth to let him go so easily. "Why aren't you getting out of here? Do you want to be eaten by us that much?" Little Xingxing glanced at the elder and muttered. Hearing this, the old man seemed to have woken up from a dream and swam into the distance without stopping. However, he did not go too far away. Instead, he hid behind a huge reef hundreds of kilometers away. He hid in the dark and observed Du Xiaofu and the young man with hope. He wanted to see what kind of relationship these two humans had with the dragons. This scene naturally couldn't escape the senses of Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing's soul cores. "You're quite curious." The two of them merely smiled at this and didn't ask any questions. The dragons are one of the top forces in this world. Their lair is indeed majestic. Du Xiaofu didn't pay any attention to the half-saint old man. In the blink of an eye, he was sizing up the mountain range in the distance with narrowed eyes. That mountain range couldn't be considered to be tall, but there were expanses of strange peaks that protruded out like bamboo shoots after the rain, and they stood towering in row upon row. At the bottom of the gloomy water, one could still see patches of multicolored light blooming, lingering between the mountain range like clouds and mist. Under the cover of countless marine plants, strings of bubbles gurgled out. They were similarly colorful and incomparably gorgeous. From afar, Du Xiaofu and the young man could feel the rich spiritual energy transmitted over. Presumably, if one really cultivated there for a long time and was enveloped by such spiritual energy, one would be able to obtain great benefits. "Let's go. We're not here for sightseeing this time. The dragons won't bring flowers and applause to welcome us. If we can't come to an agreement, we might as well just fight our way in," Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Then, his figure flashed quickly and rushed towards the mountain range with little Xingxing. The old man of the Dead Ox clan also quietly followed. The two of them only spent a few breaths of time to travel thousands of kilometers and reach the depths of the mountain range. When they got close, it was just as the old man of the Dead Ox clan had said. There was a bottomless abyss lying between the countless mountain ranges. This bottomless abyss was thousands of kilometers wide. Looking from above, it was pitch black. Even when the power of the origin spirit was released, it was impossible to find out how deep it was. Is this the Nirvana Dragon Abyss? I feel that there's a powerful talisman formation protecting this place that prevents the power of the origin spirit from probing. The mark between little Xingxing's eyebrows flickered as he spoke slowly. The foundation of the dragons has been accumulating for eons. It's definitely not ordinary. Although this talisman formation hasn't been fully activated, it's still very terrifying. Let's not be too careless. A purple gold light flashed in Du Xiaofu's eyes as he spoke solemnly. Little Xingxing nodded in agreement, but there was no fear in him. "Dad, I'll beat the grass to scare the snake and find out what's going on," little Xingxing said to Du Xiaofu as a powerful force suddenly erupted from his small body. A vast aura gushed out, and endless light burst out, causing the surrounding mountain ranges to hum and shake. Little Xingxing's action immediately attracted the attention of the Nirvana Dragon Abyss. A loud shout came from the bottomless abyss in front of them. "Who dares to step into the Nirvana Dragon Abyss?" Immediately after, a wave of golden light burst out and lit up the dark abyss. It was magnificent. Accompanied by a resounding dragon roar, an immeasurable dragon body rushed out of the abyss. As the dragon body twisted, it was like an incomparably huge palm stirring the sea. In an instant, the sea within a radius of thousands of kilometers surged with turbulent undercurrents. As the seawater surged, it carried an enormous force that swept out in all directions. Monstrous winds were stirred up on the surface of the sea in this area, surging and howling. A powerful pressure was released from the dragon's roar, causing the half-saint ancestor of the Dead Ox clan, who was hundreds of kilometers behind Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing, to feel his scalp go numb. This was a feeling that came from the depths of his bloodline. It was an innate reverence and fear for higher races, and it had nothing to do with cultivation. "Which clan are you from? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of us, the dragons? Hurry up and get lost, or we'll exterminate your entire clan." A dragon head that was as large as a mountain poked out and moved in front of Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing. 2 long breaths came out of the dragon's nose, which turned into 2 bubbles that were thousands of meters long and floated away. The dragon's whiskers swayed gently, and the dragon's eyes that were as bright as the sun glared fiercely at the two figures that were as tiny as ants in front of him. It seemed that as long as he blew gently, he could sweep the two of them to the ends of the earth. The dragons have been the kings of the four seas for many years. They are indeed arrogant enough. Du Xiaofu said indifferently. Boundless waves went around him on their own, and his body did not move at all. You're just a little mixed-blood dragon. You're not qualified to talk to me. Get Long Qianchao out. Little Xingxing took a step forward and placed one hand behind her back as she spoke domineeringly. The mixed-blood dragon before her had only just stepped into the beast region realm, so she naturally did not take him seriously. How dare you? My name is not something a little worm like you can call out. The dragon shouted, unable to restrain his anger at little Xingxing's words. Since you want to die, I'll send you on your way. As he spoke, the dragon's body twisted, and he swung his claws at little Xingxing's head, wanting to smash her into meat paste. Humph, a mixed-blood dragon dares to be presumptuous in front of me. Little Xingxing stood still as she looked at the dragon claw that was swatting down. She did not dodge and only snorted coldly. The words that came out of her mouth gradually became grand and dignified. At the same time, an invisible might erupted from her body. Like a supreme race from the primordial era, it carried a domineering aura and directly suppressed the dragon's beast soul. The dragon let out a panicked roar, and its body suddenly lost control and smashed into the ground at the bottom of the sea with a bang, crushing the mountains and crushing them into powder. The seawater that had been stirred up by the dragon also calmed down under the effect of a mysterious force, and the wind and waves stopped abruptly. Dragons! You're actually a dragon. The dragon prostrated on the ground and looked at little Xingxing in horror as it spoke with a trembling voice. He was a dragon to begin with, so he could feel it extremely clearly. That boundless dragon might was even purer and more vast than that of the patriarchs in the clan. It could not be fake. One must know that little Xingxing's father was the dragon god. That was the ultimate powerhouse of the Azure Dragon clan, and his bloodline completely surpassed all the mixed-blood dragons in this world. After a long while, the dragon finally came to his senses and looked at little Xingxing in disbelief. Purple Dragon Emperor, you're the Purple Dragon Emperor. At this point, he looked at the purple-robed young man again, and his huge dragon body trembled violently in horror. Since he knew the identity of the Purple Dragon Emperor, then the background of this purple-robed young man was also obvious. Demon King Du Xiaofu. Huge said with a trembling voice. He himself also had the cultivation of the domain realm and was extremely extraordinary. Naturally, he knew a lot about the dragon's encounters in the outside world. Among them, there was one person that the dragons hated and feared the most. This person was known as the Demon King Du Xiaofu, the barren country's rock emperor, and he had created endless legends in the outside world. Many dragons had died in his hands, causing all the dragons to hate him to the core, and all of them wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. However, this person's cultivation had advanced rapidly over the years, and he had gathered countless experts around him. It was impossible to kill him. Now, his strength was even more terrifying, and he could compete with patriarch-level figures. With his mere cultivation of the beast region realm, he indeed didn't even have the qualifications to be looked at properly. You can't stop me. Let Long Qianchao come out, or I don't mind killing you. Little Xingxing said coldly. This. The dragon was a little troubled. Under the deterrence of the tyrannical dragon's might, the dragon obediently lay on the ground and lowered his proud head, unable to summon any thoughts of resistance. If he's unwilling to pass on the message, we'll go in ourselves. Let's go. Du Xiaofu said. He had no intention of starting a massacre. After all, in the future war against the devil religion, a domain realm dragon would also add a considerable amount of combat strength. Without further delay, Du Xiaofu turned around and pulled little Xingxing with him. With a leap, he directly jumped into the dark Nirvana dragon abyss and disappeared. When the dragon saw this scene, it still lay prostrate on the ground, not daring to move. 50 kilometers away, the half-saint old man who had followed Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing here couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. The chill in his heart was even colder than the boundless seawater that enveloped his body. He didn't dare to think any further. A black light rose from his old body and turned into a huge octopus. It was his true form. The old man's half-saint cultivation erupted. 8 tentacles pierced through the underwater space, burrowed into his body, and escaped this area at the fastest speed possible. The dragon's cultivation was far inferior to his, so it had no idea at all. When the old man appeared again, a day had already passed. Using the spatial passage to travel, he was able to travel 1,000,000 kilometers away extremely quickly, much faster than when he had come. Demon King, it's actually that Demon King Du Xiaofu. The old man's octopus body transformed again, returning to a strange human form. He let out a long sigh of relief, incomparably glad that he'd managed to escape with his life. Even so, there was still lingering fear in his heart. His chest beat like a drum, as if he brushed shoulders with the god of death. If Du Xiaofu saw him like this, he wouldn't know whether to be happy or speechless. Was he that scary? Had his infamy already spread throughout the 4 seas? Shifu, you damned brat. Relying on your extraordinary talent, you don't cultivate all day long. All you do is cause trouble for this old man. See how I'll deal with you when we get back. As the old man advanced through the water, he gnashed his teeth, inwardly blaming himself for spoiling Shifu too much all these years. He'd already made up his mind. When they got back, he would definitely confine Shifu. If he didn't reach the beast region, he wouldn't be able to take a single step out of the clan. As he cursed viciously, he didn't forget to continue on his way to the Dead Oxen clan. After advancing for another few thousand kilometers, the old man's restless heart finally calmed down. However, before he could sigh, "At least I managed to keep my old life," he heard an indifferent voice not too far away. "Boss, there's a half-saint expert over there. His true form seems to be an octopus. He should know where we're going." Before this voice could finish, the old man saw a group of figures appear in front of him with a swish 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 sound, blocking his path. Taking a closer look, he saw a total of 18 people. Furthermore, they were all men and incomparably young. Judging from their appearances and auras, they were all humans. Terrifying killing intent rippled from their bodies. Just looking at them would cause one to tremble in fear. My lords, this humble one is only passing by. I didn't obstruct you, did I?" The old man's voice trembled as he cautiously cupped his fists. His posture was extremely humble. He could clearly sense that the auras of these 18 people were all stronger than his. They were definitely all saints. When these 18 people gathered together, he sighed, "Are saints so worthless?" At the same time, he was incomparably terrified. "Do you know where the dragons are?" Among the 18 people, a black-robed man stepped out. His tone was extremely cold, and his content was straight to the point. There was not a single word of nonsense. Dragons. The half-saint old man was shocked when he heard this. He had just sent the Demon King to the dragons. Suddenly, 18 young people appeared. Could it be that there was some relationship between them? However, he did not dare to ask these questions. He could only firmly suppress them in his heart. "If you know, then say it. Don't waste our time." Behind the black-clothed man, another white-robed man with a slender figure and handsome features walked out. My lord, I don't know." The half-saint old man bowed and lowered his head deeply. His eyes evaded as he told a lie. He was already certain that these people must have a deep relationship with the Demon King. However, it was not easy to escape from Du Xiaofu's hands. He did not want to get involved in this kind of thing again. However, his heart was beating like a drum. He prayed that his lie would not be seen through by these people. How dare you lie to us? Among the 18 people, another robust young man snorted coldly. He walked to the front of the old man and looked at him with a burning gaze. If you really don't know, then what are you feeling guilty about? The old man was speechless. He did not expect that they would easily see through him even though he had tried his best to conceal it. However, he could not admit to this matter no matter what. Dragons are incomparably powerful. They are not something that I can come into contact with. I really don't. The old man silently deliberated and was about to flatly deny it. Unexpectedly, he was suddenly interrupted by the robust young man halfway through his words. Stop pretending to be pitiful. Take us there. This low shout already carried a bit of icy killing intent. The old man's body suddenly trembled. In the end, he could only nod in panic and helplessness. Tears were about to flow out of his eyes. However, he was secretly complaining in his heart. Du Xiaofu took little Xingxing and the two of them jumped into the Nirvana Dragon Abyss together. As expected, many powerful dragons appeared to stop them, wanting to kill the two of them who had trespassed into the Dragon Abyss. However, under the release of little Xingxing's dragon power, those powerful people were instantly forced to retreat. They did not dare to encroach in the slightest. Of course, there were also some powerful dragons who had retreated far away before coming into contact with Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing. They must have tipped off the dragons. Du Xiaofu did not stop them. Their trip this time was to subdue the dragons in the first place. There was no need to worry too much at all. Dad, the spirit chi below is so dense. It's much stronger than our desolate country. While descending, little Xingxing could feel the aura surrounding him and could not help but sigh emotionally. The dragons have accumulated an ancient heritage. It is indeed not something that our desolate country, which has only been established for a short decade, can compare to. Du Xiaofu nodded and said, we have already descended for a long time, but we have not reached the bottom of the Nirvana Dragon Abyss. Needless to say, we must have fallen into a talisman array. Remember to be careful. Got it. Little Xingxing replied and blinked his big eyes. No matter how powerful this talisman array is, it shouldn't be able to trap my dad. Of course. Du Xiaofu said confidently and smiled, ignoring the teasing in little Xingxing's words. As he spoke, his body suddenly emitted a golden light that filled the sky. After that, a huge redbone horse monkey primordial spirit rushed out from between his brows and occupied the sea. Roar! The redbone horse monkey roared and the sound waves spread out, turning into layers of ripples, causing layers of turbulent currents in the sea. Reveal yourself. Du Xiaofu bellowed and the essence spirit of the redbone horse monkey blossomed with a dazzling light, illuminating the dark abyss with incomparable brightness. Golden light filled the surroundings, and in an instant, mysterious runes began to take shape in the surroundings. This talisman array is indeed impressive. Du Xiaofu exclaimed in admiration. These patterns were formed by many talisman runes and moved according to a strange trajectory. It seemed to be messy and disorderly, but it contained all the principles and was hard to grasp. However, with Du Xiaofu's attainments in the talisman Dao, he was able to see through most of it very quickly. When this talisman array is not activated, it is an illusion array that can confuse people's senses and isolate the area that it is protecting, making people unable to detect it. Du Xiaofu analyzed. However, once there is any intense movement, it will activate the mechanism of the killing array. I'm afraid that even an ordinary saint stage cultivator would not be able to escape the fate of being killed. Then what should we do? Little Xingxing asked. Either we use our talisman Dao cultivation to break its principles, or we use brute force to break it. However, I don't have the heart to slowly study it here. Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Then, he called out to little Xingxing, you be careful. Suddenly, the purple gold heavenly tower appeared in his hand. Sword breaks 10,000 miles. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. The broadsword in his hand was held up with both hands, and he raised it up. Suddenly, the four phantoms of the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise appeared. They let out waves of dragon roars, tiger roars, sparrows, and tortoises' cries as they pounced out. A vast aura surged and condensed crazily. It quickly gathered into a dazzling sword light that was as bright as the sun. Such a sword light made Du Xiaofu look like a god. It slashed down at the Nirvana dragon abyss under his feet. The sword light roared and slashed directly on the talisman array below. Boom! A vast sound reverberated in all directions. It was as if thousands of mountains had collapsed and thousands of waves were roaring. The abyss was trembling, and the seawater was roaring. The entire underwater world seemed to be shaken violently. It trembled incessantly as if it was facing the end of the world. Swish, a long and narrow hole was torn open in the space. It stretched for thousands of miles, and a terrifying aura fluctuated. It was pitch black. The seawater was disturbed by the enormous force. It was as if it had been pushed aside by a giant hand, and it rolled to the sides directly. For a moment, a vacuum zone was formed around Du Xiaofu and Little Star. It all happened in the blink of an eye. When the sword light landed on the patterns of the talisman array, countless patterns flashed with dazzling brilliance. But right after that, amidst the sounds of rustling, they shattered successively and transformed into dense talisman markings that raged through the seawater and swept towards the surroundings. "Be careful, Dad. The killing array is coming," Little Star said. Du Xiaofu didn't need to be reminded of this. He didn't think that this attack could completely crack the talisman array that the dragons relied on to guard their clan. When the sword light shattered countless patterns, it also activated most of the remaining power of the talisman array. Countless patterns twisted and combined, and huge golden dragon bodies condensed. Their scarlet eyes were glaring, and there were probably tens of millions of them. It was as if a hornet's nest had been poked. Countless dragon-shaped phantoms charged towards Du Xiaofu and Little Star. Roar, roar, roar. The dragon roars were loud and resounded in the abyss, stirring up endless waves. Those pairs of blood-red eyes were filled with terrifying murderous intent. There really are a lot of them. Du Xiaofu's eyes narrowed. These dragon bodies were all formed by the talisman array and had powerful offensive power. When the dragons attacked, they would kill fiercely and shatter all obstacles. Today, if they were not careful, they might really fall into the trap and suffer some injuries. Chapter 25-22. With that in mind, Du Xiaofu did not delay. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned the 7 saint puppets. 7 shadows instantly pounced out and attacked the countless dragon shadows. The 7 saint stage puppets were like tigers in a flock of sheep, moving around everywhere. It did not take long for more than a dozen dragon shadows to be annihilated. However, there were too many dragon shadows created by the talisman array, and they were extremely powerful. It was impossible to kill all of them in a short time. The dragon shadows carried an ancient and ferocious aura as they swarmed up and quickly drowned the 7 saint puppets. At the same time, countless dragon shadows also surrounded Du Xiaofu and Little Xingxing, gnashing their teeth and looking extremely ferocious. Seeing such a scene, Du Xiaofu's eyelids could not help but twitch. He deeply felt how terrifying this array was. What was even more terrifying was that there were a large number of powerful existences among those dragon shadows. Compared to an ordinary middle-stage Sage Realm cultivator, he wasn't any weaker. Relying on the derivation of the array, extremely powerful dragon shadows would continuously evolve. Even if Du Xiaofu and his daughter were extremely powerful and could protect themselves from too much harm, they would probably be trapped here and be exhausted from dealing with it. However, it was fortunate that their cultivation was exquisite. If it were anyone else, they would probably have been killed by this array. Little Xingxing, the bloodline in your body is pure. Use your dragon's might to suppress them. Du Xiaofu held the purple gold heavenly tower in his hand and said to Little Xingxing. Little Xingxing nodded, and the mark between his brows shone brightly. Immediately after, a breathtaking dragon's roar erupted from his mouth and spread out in the sea. A vast pressure spread and filled every inch of space in the Nirvana dragon abyss. Those twisting dragon shadows paused under this pressure. Their movements slowed down a lot, and their power weakened a lot. It could be seen that the bloodline of the dragon god was indeed extraordinary. Du Xiaofu didn't hesitate. He raised his sword and attacked. One after another, the dragon shadows were destroyed and turned into golden runes that flew around the seabed. This talisman formation must have been left behind from ancient times. No, I have to completely destroy it before I can escape. Du Xiaofu thought to himself. Even though these dragon shadows were being suppressed, they still retained a huge amount of combat power. After all, they were only evolved from talisman arrays and were not real living beings. The pressure released by Little Star had a limited effect on them. Most importantly, the runes that the dragon shadow had turned into had not been completely destroyed. Instead, they would return to the talisman array and continue to form countless patterns before condensing into the shadows of dragons in an endless stream. This greatly reduced the energy consumption of the array. While thinking, Du Xiaofu's golden scarlet majestic monkey primordial spirit moved. A powerful aura gushed out and turned into a giant phantom of a five-fingered mountain. Roar! The tremendous roar shook the underwater world. The torrential current surged and receded rapidly, forming a vacuum in the Nirvana dragon abyss. The phantom of the mountain expanded violently and spread outwards, wanting to penetrate the talisman array. Seeing this, countless dragon shadows roared and charged forward. They surrounded the scarlet majestic monkey primordial spirit and stopped Du Xiaofu's movement. In an instant, a huge power was added to Du Xiaofu's body, making him feel even more pressured. Break for me! Du Xiaofu's hair danced wildly as he shouted loudly. The scarlet majestic monkey primordial spirit raised its head and roared loudly, breaking the void. The golden light exploded. Under the boundless pressure, it endured the attacks of countless dragon shadows and expanded outward step by step. The further it went, the more difficult it was to move. And when the phantom of the five-fingered mountain touched the talisman array, it caused countless dragon shadows to roar wildly. Their killing intent became even stronger. The pressure released by Little Star could not suppress them. Du Xiaofu, we dragons have an unfinished feud with you. How dare you barge into the Nirvana dragon abyss? Since you've walked right into our trap, then you'll leave your life here today. It was also at this moment that such a voice entered Du Xiaofu and Little Star's ears. With a slight movement of his mind, Du Xiaofu sensed that there were many dragons' auras outside the array. Although his line of sight was blocked by the talisman array, he could still sense that there were some familiar people among them. For example, Long Qianchao. Obviously, the person in charge of the dragons had already received the notice and knew of his arrival. Do you think that a talisman array can really trap me? Long Qianchao, are the dragons still going to be stubborn? Du Xiaofu replied coldly. Don't think that I don't know your purpose in coming to the dragons. You, Du Xiaofu, have killed so many of my dragons. I wish I could turn you into ashes. At this moment, you still want to use my dragons as a knife? You're simply delusional. Outside the talisman array, Long Qianchao snorted coldly. As Du Xiaofu controlled the redbone horse monkey's primordial spirit, he raised his brows and laughed instead of getting angry. The dragons have repeatedly violated me. So what if I kill them? You only have yourselves to blame. Similarly, if you're strong enough, I, Du Xiaofu, would have died more than 100 times. After Du Xiaofu finished speaking, he did not hear Long Qianchao's reply for a long time. He was probably extremely angry. After a long time, Long Qianchao said indifferently, kid, you'd better enjoy the might of the primordial Nirvana dragon formation. Today, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings. Your arrogance will also end here. Is that so? Watch carefully. Du Xiaofu said in a low voice. Father, don't waste words with them. Let's break the talisman array first, then we'll settle the score with them. On the other side, Little Star waved his palm and destroyed dozens of dragon shadows, causing them to scatter in the air. Du Xiaofu nodded and slowly closed his eyes. While maintaining the illusion of the five-finger mountain, a bolt of lightning suddenly lit up between his eyebrows. Then, the silver net soul-devouring thunder, earth-shattering thunder, golden crow sky-burning thunder, and other spiritual thunders rushed out and swept in all directions. Thunder rumbling 8 desolates. Break. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. Under the control of his mind, several spiritual thunders began to sweep wildly, carrying with them sharp whistling sounds, piercing the air and tearing the void apart. Boom! Crack! Crack! The bottom of the sea shook violently. Several spiritual thunders shone brightly, and the lightning that filled the sky raged out, opening into colorful lightning bolts that contained unparalleled power and struck down. Lightning surged wildly and filled the entire space. It was as if a string of fiery cannons had exploded, causing endless rumbling noises to ring out. Bolts of lightning poured down, striking the dragon shadows and causing violent explosions, causing them to shatter in the blink of an eye. They didn't even have the chance to turn back into talisman patterns and return to the array to evolve again. Under such ferocious power, all the obstacles were smashed into nothingness in an instant. This was the profound meaning of thunder that Du Xiaofu had comprehended. The ancestor of the Du family had once transcended the mortal realm with the profound meaning of thunder. In the end, he even surpassed the heaven sage realm and integrated the way of heaven. After Du Xiaofu meditated in the sacred palace, he had a deeper understanding of thunder and lightning. The vast thunder and lightning surged with the heavenly might, as if a god was angry, as if the demon king was roaring. A terrifying aura swept across, wrapping everything in it. The bottom of the sea was trembling, and torrents were surging. In the area above the Nirvana Dragon Abyss, it was as if a tsunami had arrived. Wind and waves filled the sky, covering the sky and sweeping everything away. It was extremely frightening. Countless sea creatures were frightened out of their wits, and they fled in panic. Thunder Meridian opening, rise. In the Nirvana Dragon Abyss, Du Xiaofu shouted again. As his voice fell, vein-like patterns appeared on the surface of his body, crisscrossing. These patterns shone with a blinding light. They flickered with crackling sounds of thunder and lightning, releasing an overflowing might. With the help of the Thunder Meridian, the 3,000 thunder-quaking thunder, the great Een celestial thunder, and so on instantly erupted with an even more ferocious aura. For a time, the sky was filled with thunder and lightning, rushing back and forth like roaring rivers, shuttling back and forth among the countless dragon shadows. Under the constant attack of the thunder, the divine dragon shadows let out mournful cries and were quickly destroyed. Du Xiaofu's origin spirit of the redbone horse monkey was also closer to the patterns on the outer layer of the array. As long as he could break out, he would be able to escape from the array. This scoundrel's methods are so terrifying that even the Nirvana Dragon array seems to be unable to trap him. Outside the array, Long Qianchao and the others watched this scene in disbelief. It was obvious that if Du Xiaofu was allowed to continue like this, he would break out of the array sooner or later. No, we can't let this kid continue like this. Long Qianchao's face was solemn as he ordered the dragons behind him in a deep voice, "Open the gate of life. A few saints will enter the array with me and take out the Dragon Abyss talismans to protect yourselves from being attacked by the array." After he finished speaking, he flipped his wrist, and a few ancient pebbles appeared. He distributed them to the people behind him and kept one for himself. Then, a few dragons used their cultivation and released a torrential secret force to open a gap in the array. Kill Du Xiaofu while he's busy. We can't let him continue to run wild. Long Qianchao led the 3 Saint Realm experts in a flash and charged aggressively toward Du Xiaofu. Because of the Dragon Abyss talismans, when the 4 of them entered the array, countless golden dragon phantoms seemed to have received instructions and avoided attacking them. You want to hurt my father? Do you really think I'm not here? When little Xingxing saw this, he didn't hesitate at all. His eyes were filled with golden flames and exploded with brilliant golden light. His petite body expanded and turned into a huge dragon in the sky. He spread his wings like a phoenix's and spread red-purple flames. Starlight flowed on the surface of his body, and the aura of the great golden-winged rock and a terrifying supreme aura swept out in all directions. Get out of here. Little Xingxing's main body rose into the sky and filled with heavenly might. His golden dragon eyes were filled with golden flames as if they contained 2 vast golden seas of fire. A frightening and strange pressure descended upon this space from within his body. In an instant, Long Qianchao and the 3 Saint Realm experts of the Dragon Clan felt their bodies tremble for no reason. Their beast souls could not help but palpitate. The power in their bodies went out of control as a sense of weakness spread through them. What a terrifying pressure! What kind of dragon is this? A dragon's expert said with a trembling voice. His eyes flickered with endless fear as he looked at little Xingxing's main body. They were all dragons, but compared to little Xingxing's bloodline, they could only be called mixed-blood dragons. When facing the descendant of the dragon god, they couldn't help but feel reverence and prostration. Stabilize the beast souls and resist this pressure. The 3 of you restrain her. I'll go and kill that brat Du Xiaofu. Long Qianchao suppressed the fear that came from the depths of his soul and ordered the 3 people behind him. Yes. The 3 saints nodded one after another. They circulated their powerful cultivation and gradually calmed down. They charged out together and blocked little Xingxing. Immediately, a great battle erupted. Little Xingxing flapped his wings and attacked like a terrifying lord. He carried a ferocious aura and fought 3 saints alone. In terms of cultivation, the 3 of them weren't inferior to little Xingxing. However, due to the suppression of their bloodlines, even if they worked together, they could only delay little Xingxing and prevent him from rescuing Du Xiaofu. Brat, it's time for your life to end. Long Qianchao flew through the talisman array with murderous intent. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Du Xiaofu. At the same time, he waved his palm and condensed a dazzling golden light. It turned into a huge dragon claw and clawed at Du Xiaofu. How dare a loser like you try to be fierce? Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes. With a single thought, the soul-destroying godly thunder responded to his summons and let out an ear-piercing shriek. A long tail of light trailed behind it like a river of lightning, blocking Long Qianchao's dragon claw before it could land. Chi, chi chi chi, the lightning and dragon claw collided, emitting a teeth-numbing sound. The lightning was torn apart by the dragon claw, and the dragon claw was destroyed by the lightning. Terrifying energy waves swept out and shattered the countless golden dragon shadows in the surroundings. They dissipated into nothingness. Berserk dragon rises from the abyss, roar. Long Qianchao withdrew his palm and let out a loud roar that shook the 4 seas. His body quickly transformed into the infinite dragon body. As he twisted and rolled, the space hummed and trembled. On the cliffs on both sides of the Nirvana dragon abyss, huge rocks shattered and fell into the bottomless abyss. 3,000 quaking thunders, kill. Du Xiaofu shouted in a low voice and summoned another 3,000 quaking thunders. Together with the soul annihilation thunder, they rolled out endless lightning and crushed toward Long Qianchao. Boom 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 boom. The divine thunder roared and the dragon roared as a terrifying collision broke out. Under Du Xiaofu's control, the 2 bolts of lightning were like 2 magnificent ribbons that bloomed with different colors and wrapped around Long Qianchao's body. A terrifying aura of destruction spread and surged in the Nirvana dragon abyss. It was as terrifying as a battle between gods and demons. With Du Xiaofu's current strength, he could trap Long Qianchao with just the 2 bolts of lightning. He couldn't pose a threat to him at all. However, after losing the suppression of the 2 bolts of spiritual lightning, Du Xiaofu also divided his attention. Under the weakening of the 2 bolts of spiritual lightning, the pressure on the talisman formation was greatly reduced. Immediately, even more golden dragon silhouettes appeared. They danced in the air and attacked Du Xiaofu and little Xingxing with all their might. Du Xiaofu, no matter how many tricks you have, you can't escape death today. Long Qianchao, who was trapped by the 2 bolts of lightning, let out a loud roar with endless dragon might. However, compared to the pressure released by little Xingxing, it was a little insignificant. As he roared, the countless golden dragons in the talisman array seemed to be guided and began to converge. Chapter 25-23. Long Qianchao possessed the Dragon Abyss Talisman and could control the primordial Nirvana dragon formation to a certain extent. Countless golden dragon phantoms responded to his summons and roared into action, gathering around Long Qianchao's massive body. Along the way, the golden dragon phantoms disintegrated and turned into talisman runes that blotted out the sky. These runes then bolstered Long Qianchao's body, forming a golden dragon phantom the size of a mountain ridge that lay in the air. Long Qianchao's body was more than twice as large as its initial form. Nirvana dragon swallows the sky. Kill! Long Qianchao let out such a loud shout. As the huge dragon twisted its body, the golden dragon around it also moved. Roar! The golden dragon phantom roared, opening its mouth like a bottomless black hole. It was terrifying and intimidating. As the dragon's roar fell, the space within the talisman formation collapsed as if the backbone of the earth had suddenly snapped. An incomparably strong suction force surged from the dragon's mouth as if to swallow everything. A terrifying might surged in this space, shattering the countless dragon phantoms that the talisman formation had conjured and sucked them in. Little Star and the 3 Saint Realm experts in the midst of a great battle shuddered at the same time. Even though they were very far away, they could still feel the tremendous tearing force invading every inch of their flesh. Du Xiaofu, who was at the center of the force, bore the brunt of the pressure. He divided his attention to control the Scarlet Horse Monkey's nascent spirit and several bolts of spirit lightning at the same time to defend against Long Qianchao's attack. Faced with such a terrifying might, he seemed to be powerless. Du Xiaofu, hand over your life. A deafening roar came from Long Qianchao's body. The golden dragon phantom lifted its head and swooped down at his command, swallowing Du Xiaofu whole before he could even resist. In the end, he entered Long Qianchao's mouth. After Du Xiaofu's figure disappeared, the Scarlet Horse Monkey's nascent spirit in the Nirvana Dragon Abyss lost control and dissipated as well. Only a few bolts of spirit lightning were left outside, still whining and releasing lightning that filled the sky. At this moment, even more dragons had gathered outside the talisman formation. When they saw that Du Xiaofu had been swallowed by Long Qianchao like a whale, their faces relaxed and they all laughed heartily. The dragons of our Nirvana Dragon Abyss is not a place where a little thief can do as he pleases. No matter how powerful this Du Xiaofu is, he can forget about breaking the Nirvana Primordial Nirvana Dragon Formation. Patriarch, with the help of the Primordial Nirvana Dragon Formation, killing him is as easy as flipping over your hand. That's right, that this kid is. Everyone was in the Nilva. NN Qianchao. God Dragon Du Xiaofu being swallowed into the dragon's stomach also made the distant little star feel anxious. His dragon body swept across, its wings flapped, and its tail lashed out, forcing the 3 dragon Saint Realm powerhouses to retreat. Then, it charged in Long Qianchao's direction. Little thing, where do you think you're going? You want to rescue that thief Du Xiaofu? Have you asked for our permission? The 3 dragons waved their palms and transformed into their true forms to block Star NN's Nilva Dragon Abyss. The 3 dragons' true forms hovered in the air and roared with their heads held high, enveloped in a monstrous aura. Get lost! Star NN's Nilva dragon abyss roared. Lightning shot out from its claws and blocked the three saints. At the same time, a hazy golden light bloomed from its body and gathered on its wings. Gee! A bird's cry broke out. This was the great golden-winged rock clan's ultimate skill. It increased its speed greatly and broke away from the three's encirclement in the blink of an eye. Soon, the Nilva dragon abyss was in front of Long Qianchao. It swept its wings and endless flames spread out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the vermilion bird clan's ultimate skill was unleashed. Raging flames covered the sky and swept across the land. The terrifying heat invaded and burned the air red like metal, as if it was going to melt. The golden dragon shadow around Long Qianchao was quickly being consumed by the terrifying temperature. The talisman runes melted into liquid form and flowed along the void. Then, they evaporated and disappeared into nothingness. If we were in the outside world, I would be somewhat afraid of you. But in this primordial nirvana dragon formation, even Du Xiaofu can't do anything to me. How dare a little bastard like you act so presumptuously in front of me? Long Qianchao opened his mouth and glared at Little Star. Even if you have an extraordinary background, don't think that I won't dare to kill you. Roar! As Long Qianchao roared, golden dragon phantoms danced within the immemorial nirvana dragon formation like locusts that filled the sky. Countless dragons twisted their bodies and continued to converge on Long Qianchao, causing the giant dragon around him to become even more majestic. Even the terrifying power of Little Star could not stop this amplification. Today, I will send you and your daughter on your way. Long Qianchao roared. His dragon tail swiftly swung, carrying a tremendous power. It suddenly struck Little Xingxing's body. Boom! The violent collision was like the sound of heavenly thunder. The blazing flames on Little Star's wings were extinguished. Her body, which did not appear huge, was sent flying with one blow. Outside the talisman formation, a group of dragons experts watched and discussed. Everyone could not help but feel extremely pleased when Little Star was repelled. So what if she's the daughter of the dragon god? She wants to order us dragons around just because she has an extraordinary background? Simply wishful thinking. That's right. Today, we'll kill this little thing and Du Xiaofu together. I don't believe that the dragon god can really do anything to us. It's indeed terrifying enough. Little Star hurriedly retreated, unwilling to meet force with force. Long Qianchao, who was supported by the primordial nirvana dragon formation, was incomparably terrifying. In this place, his strength had reached an extremely terrifying level. Even Little Star could not contend with him. Kill! Long Qianchao roared again and controlled the enormous golden dragon phantom to follow Little Star, wanting to take the opportunity to tear her to pieces. At the same time, the three sage stage experts of the dragons caught up and began to surround Little Star again. Long Qianchao's 4 strong claws were wide open, tearing open wounds in the void as he advanced rapidly. However, just as he was halfway through, his body suddenly shook and he cursed fiercely, "Damn it!" However, on its huge body, there were suddenly streaks of purple gold light that lit up one after another. These streaks of light were only as thick as an ordinary person's finger and released the divine power of thunder. Streaks of light shone and covered Long Qianchao's body like meandering meridians, making him look like he was covered by a large net of thunder. This scene was exactly the same as when Du Xiaofu summoned the thunder martial vein earlier. Damn it! Damn it! Long Qianchao cursed and stopped chasing Little Xingxing. Majestic energy circulated in his body, trying to suppress the power of the thunder. Needless to say, it was definitely caused by Du Xiaofu, who he had swallowed earlier. At this moment, he could only rely on his own strength to suppress it. If he borrowed the power of the primordial nirvana dragon formation, he would probably be severely injured. However, with his strength, how could he compare to the current Du Xiaofu? Before long, the lightning on Long Qianchao's body surged and shot into the 9 heavens. With a series of muffled puff 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 sounds, its huge dragon body was directly torn apart, creating a terrifying gash as dragon blood madly gushed out. Amidst the ripples of lightning, a figure bathed in thunder charged out of the gash. It was Du Xiaofu. He gripped the purple-gold heavenly tower tightly in his hand. His purple robes were stained with golden dragon blood and fluttered behind him, making him look like a terrifying Asura from hell. Long Qianchao retreated hurriedly, distancing himself from Du Xiaofu. At this moment, he had already returned to his human form. His clothes were tattered and he looked extremely wretched. His head and hands, which were exposed outside of his robe, were covered with dense cracks, making him look like a broken but unbreakable porcelain. He looked like he had suffered extreme injuries. Father. On the other side, little Xingxing was overjoyed to see that Du Xiaofu was unharmed. He finally relaxed and focused on fighting the 3 saint stage dragons. Long Qianchao, you're still far from being able to kill me, Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's body was surrounded by lightning as he looked coldly at Long Qianchao. However, he did not take advantage of the other party's heavy injuries to kill him. His gaze was cast towards the talisman formation outside. How is this possible? The patriarch is heavily injured. At this moment, everyone outside the talisman formation was looking at this scene in shock. However, when Du Xiaofu's gaze shifted to the talisman formation, these people finally panicked. Oh no, this little thief still wants to break the talisman formation. Quickly send someone in, we can't let him succeed. An elder from the dragon clan said, and many other experts moved in response. However, it was already too late. Within the talisman formation, Du Xiaofu stepped into the air, and the scarlet horse monkey's primordial spirit rushed out from between his brows again. The 5-finger mountain appeared and expanded rapidly, instantly filling the entire talisman formation space. The majestic primordial spirit power surged and directly impacted the formation's runes outside the talisman formation. Hum, an ear-piercing buzzing sound pierced everyone's eardrums and lasted for a long time. The 5-finger mountain continued to expand and penetrated the formation's runes bit by bit. Oh no, the talisman formation is about to break. Once he enters, the dragons won't be able to rest in peace. Let's block him first and quickly ask the patriarch to come out of seclusion. Shouted a dragon's expert. As he gave the order, he led many experts to charge towards the talisman formation in an attempt to stop Du Xiaofu. Although Long Qianchao was heavily injured in the talisman formation, he would not watch Du Xiaofu break the formation and leave without doing anything. With a flip of his wrist, he took out the Dragon Abyss talisman. Then, under the circulation of a mysterious force, the primordial Nirvana dragon formation transformed into countless golden dragon phantoms and gathered towards him. Not long after, another huge dragon form condensed and carried a terrifying might as it pounced towards Du Xiaofu. The huge dragon opened its mouth and spat out a dragon's breath. The terrifying aura was vast and mighty, and the space was pierced through. However, this terrifying dragon's breath did not hit Du Xiaofu. This was because his body had suddenly disappeared from where he was standing. Chapter 25-24. Inside the talisman array, the golden light of the redbone horse monkey's essence soul retracted, and the phantom of the 5-finger mountain also dissipated. Du Xiaofu's figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. The giant dragon phantom's attack missed. Only then did Long Qianchao react. He turned around in shock and saw that the purple-robed youth's figure had already gone outside the talisman array. Damn it! Long Qianchao cursed. He did not dare to hesitate any longer and also rushed out of the talisman array. The 3 saint stage dragons who were still fighting with little Xingxing also stopped fighting and retreated. The 3 of them looked at each other. Now that the array was broken, Du Xiaofu had already entered the dragons, and it would probably cause great waves. For a moment, the 3 of them did not know whether to stay and continue to deal with little Xingxing or go out to fight Du Xiaofu together. Old thing, don't block the way. Just as they were hesitating, little Xingxing's cold shout sounded in their ears. The dragon's main body let out a roar that shook the void. A terrifying pressure spread, and the three saint stage experts were caught off guard. They suddenly felt their legs go weak and almost fell down. They circulated the power in their bodies and suppressed the trembling of their essence souls. Seeing little Xingxing charge over, the three of them hurriedly attacked and blocked together. In an instant, the four of them fought again. At this time, outside the talisman array, a group of dragon's experts surrounded Du Xiaofu, who had barged into the clan. They were extremely nervous and ready for battle. Du Xiaofu, what do you want? A hale and hearty old man with a white beard faced Du Xiaofu and took a step forward to ask sternly. Du Xiaofu raised his eyelids and glanced at the old man indifferently. He did not say anything but turned to look at the primordial nirvana dragon array behind him. He used the redbone horse monkey's essence soul to break through all talisman arrays and escaped from it. However, Little Star was still inside, facing the joint attack of the three sage stage powerhouses. With little Xingxing's strength, even if he couldn't defeat his opponents, it would be more than enough for him to protect himself. Fortunately, the immemorial Nirvana Dragon Formation's energy had been greatly depleted during his continuous battles with Long Qianchao. Its might had been weakened by more than half. Otherwise, even if he possessed the redbone horse monkey primordial spirit, it would be very difficult for him to escape so quickly. Under such circumstances, there was no doubt that Little Star would win. It shouldn't take long for him to defeat the three of them. This made Du Xiaofu feel slightly relieved. Du Xiaofu, do you really think that we dragons are pushovers? Do you really think that you can do whatever you want here? Just as Du Xiaofu turned around, he saw the brilliance of the formation flash and a miserable figure leapt out. It was Long Qianchao. The injuries that were as dense as meridians were still on his body. Fine lines crisscrossed, making him look like he would shatter at any moment. His dragon eyes glared hatefully at Du Xiaofu. It was frightening. I'm not here to seek revenge. If there was a grudge, I would usually take it on the spot. Du Xiaofu snorted coldly. However, he didn't answer Long Qianchao. Instead, he continued the words of the old man from before with an expression that said it was only right. However, these words directly poked at the sore spot of the dragons. They were almost angered to death. The old man who had reprimanded Du Xiaofu earlier had his white beard curled up and was about to fly up. Everyone knew that Du Xiaofu and the dragons had always had a tense relationship. It was almost to the point where they wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Many young elites of the dragons had died at his hands. Many experts of the older generation had also been killed by him. This kind of hatred could not be washed away even with all the water in the world. However, at the same time that these people felt hatred, they also felt deep regret and helplessness. They regretted provoking this demon king from the very beginning. They should not have underestimated him and formed a blood feud with him. However, now that they had fallen to such a state, there was no room for regret. They could only brace themselves and fight to the death. No matter why you've barged into my dragons today, we dragons do not welcome you. Long Qianchao gritted his teeth and said word by word, I admit that you are indeed powerful. However, you must know that this is not the outside world. This is the dragons. We will not tolerate your arrogance. Humph, Long Qianchao, who's the arrogant one here? To tell you the truth, if it weren't for the fact that you dragons still have some use and have some relationship with the dragon god, I wouldn't mind bringing people here to wipe you dragons from this world without leaving a single trace. Du Xiaofu snorted coldly. His aura was awe-inspiring. You must believe that the current me has the strength to do so. As soon as he said this, all the dragons felt a chill run down their spines. His words carried a terrifying and arrogant threat. However, most of the people present knew that this was not a threat to Du Xiaofu. Just as he had said, he really could do it. The current barren country had already become extremely powerful. They had dozens of Saint Realm experts. Furthermore, there were more and more people who were improving and could break through at any time. Disregarding the desolate country, Du Xiaofu also had a wide range of personal connections. The Golden-Winged Rock clan, the Fang clan, the Taoist clan, the Confucian clan, the School of Farmer, the Mahist clan, the Phoenix clan, the Yin-Yang clan, the Ancient Heavenly sect, the Mysterious Talisman sect. In addition, there were also the Human clan and the Beast Alliance in the ancient wilderness Fearsome Ground. If Du Xiaofu really wanted to exterminate the dragons, all he needed to do was call out and countless powerful people would respond and raise their armies to attack. It was true that the dragons were powerful, but it was impossible for them to fight against so many powerful forces alone. In the end, they would only be annihilated. It was only at this moment that Long Qianchao and the rest realized that Du Xiaofu's arrogance did have a basis. Everyone stared blankly at Du Xiaofu and did not say anything for a long time. After a long time, Long Qianchao slowly shook off his anger and shock. He naturally knew that the purpose of Du Xiaofu's trip was to subdue them so that they could work for him in the upcoming great calamity of the devil religion. Facing Du Xiaofu, Long Qianchao gritted his teeth and said, "We dragons have been passed down from the primordial age and will never listen to you, Du Xiaofu. I advise you to give up on this idea while it's still early." The dragons had their own considerations and would not compromise so easily just because of Du Xiaofu's words or because of that mutated dragon with the bloodline of the dragon god. Who do you think you are, Long Qianchao? Based on your position in the dragons, do you think you can make the decision? Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows when he heard that. Back in the Eternal Tomb, the dragons also had a powerful person who returned alive. Let him come out and talk. I know that the dragons have a deep foundation and should have some extremely powerful people in seclusion. Let them come out and talk. Chapter 25-25. Du Xiaofu. Long Qianchao clenched his teeth so hard that his knuckles cracked. The contempt in Du Xiaofu's words made him furious. In any case, he was a pillar of support for the dragons. In the entire dragon clan, there weren't many existences that were higher than him. However, Du Xiaofu looked at him with contempt, his tone full of disdain. How could he not be angry? Just as Long Qianchao was about to fight Du Xiaofu once more, a commotion broke out among the dragons and they all looked behind them. An extremely burly old man walked over with large strides, followed by several powerful dragons. The old ancestor is here. It's Dragon 9th Old Ancestor Gu. This is great. Let's see if this demon king still dares to be impudent in my dragon city. The appearance of the old man caused many dragons to become excited, and they began to discuss among themselves. Du Xiaofu looked up and saw the old man rushing over. Naturally, he had seen this old man before. It was the dragon's powerhouse who had walked out of the Eternal Tomb. After listening to the discussion among the dragons, he also found out that this old ancestor was called Dragon 9 Gu. Du Xiaofu, why have you come to my dragons? Dragon 9 stepped forward and questioned sternly without any greeting. When Du Xiaofu heard this, he immediately frowned. He originally had some respect for the old man. After all, the old man had made great contributions in suppressing the demon god in the primordial era. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu's heart was burning with rage. As I said, I didn't come to the Nirvana Dragon Abyss to seek revenge. Du Xiaofu suppressed the anger in his heart and said seriously, "You are the ancestor of the dragons. You have lived since the primordial era until now. You have even suppressed the demon god in the Eternal Tomb for eons. Now that the great tribulation of heaven and earth is about to happen again, I'm sure you know how terrifying the demon god is. I'm afraid that the dragons won't be able to escape unscathed. Therefore, I hope that the dragons can face this matter head-on. I, Du Xiaofu, can let go of past grudges, and I hope that the dragons can do the same. Whether it's for the sake of all living beings in the world, or for the sake of the long-term survival of our respective races, to be able to unite with all living beings to deal with the demon god together. Du Xiaofu said a lot in one breath. These words were his true thoughts. The scenes he'd seen in the tomb of heaven and earth when he'd returned to the upper reaches of the river of time were still fresh in his mind. Mountains and rivers were shattered, rivers of blood flowed, and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. Those hellish scenes were too shocking. How many living beings had died in that great tribulation? His ancestor, as the heavenly Tao of a world, had also fallen in that battle. As for the dragons, the wounds they'd suffered had yet to fully heal to this day. Du Xiaofu, how many of our dragons have you killed? You still want us to work with you? Dream on. Before Dragon 9 could speak, Long Qianchao jumped out again and shouted loudly. His furious demeanor had completely lost the demeanor that a Saint Realm expert should have. Dragon 9 was also secretly displeased by this. He waved a hand and stopped Long Qianchao from continuing. He turned to Du Xiaofu. I was part of the primordial era's calamity and naturally know of its devastation. In the great tribulation of dragons and phoenixes instigated by the demon god, our dragons suffered even greater losses and lost countless disciples. Our overall strength was reduced to less than 100%. Later on, the power of heaven and earth was suppressed, and no one could break through to the sage realm anymore. Therefore, it's precisely because of this that the dragon's current situation is probably no longer able to deal with the demon god. Therefore, please go back. However, I can promise you on behalf of all the dragons that during the demon god's calamity, all the dragons will hide from the world and will not cause any trouble for you because of past grudges. Hide from the world and not come out. Du Xiaofu suddenly laughed coldly. I know that the dragons must have their own methods and independent space. Perhaps they can escape from the impending Great Tribulation and avoid losses. Or perhaps, now that the suppression of the power of heaven and earth has been removed, you should have already contacted the dragons of other worlds and received a certain amount of help. Indeed, you can protect yourselves without worry. However, I want to ask, can you really get the consent of the dragons of other worlds to do this? As Du Xiaofu spoke, he looked back at the primordial nirvana dragon formation behind him again. At this time, the battle between Little Xingxing and the three sage dragons was nearing its end. With the power of the talisman array greatly reduced, Little Xingxing's strength directly suppressed the three of them. After taking a glance, Du Xiaofu turned back and continued to speak to Dragon 9, the daughter of the dragon god has come here personally. As a branch of the dragons of the outside world, what reason do you have to not listen to orders? As he spoke, a strong domineering aura slowly brewed from Du Xiaofu's body. His last sentence was laced with a hint of threat. It was impossible for the dragons to play it safe. It was not that he wanted to drag them down, but he simply could not trust the character of these people. Not to mention that they might stab him in the back during the battle. If the demon god and the devil religion were too rampant, the flames of war would eventually spread to the dragons. In their deranged state, these people might even collude with the demon god and take the opportunity to get rid of him. Du Xiaofu would never allow such an unstable factor to exist. Because this was completely related to the safety of himself and his many friends and family. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Dragon 9's old eyes burned as he looked at Little Xingxing in the talisman array and said, I know that she is the daughter of the dragon god, but for the survival of the dragons of this world, forgive me for not listening to your orders and fighting the devil religion. We dragons have sacrificed enough in the primordial war. While Dragon 9 was speaking, the battle in the talisman array had already ended. The three sages were all beaten down and lost the ability to fight again. The bloodline of the dragons and the vermilion bird flowed in her body. It was incomparably powerful and was not something that ordinary sages could contend against. The talisman array, whose power had been greatly reduced, could no longer trap her. The strange dragon's body stretched out horizontally, emitting a monstrous might. Her wings flapped with terrifying power and shattered the talisman array. Amidst the rumbling, her original body flew out and arrived behind Du Xiaofu, transforming into her human form. Old thing, do you mean that you won't accept the orders of the main clan in the outside world? As soon as little Xingxing landed, she cursed, if you mean what you say and can completely represent the wishes of all the dragons, then I can also guarantee you that even if you can safely survive the great calamity, as long as I am still alive at that time, I will definitely get the main clan to come and wipe out all of you scum. Chapter 25-26. Translator, H2DH2 Mr. If Du Xiaofu's attitude was arrogant, then Little Star's words were extremely intimidating to all the dragons. If Du Xiaofu really brought people to attack the dragons, they would definitely fight to the death. However, if the dragons from the outside world were to come, they would not even have the courage to resist and could only wait to be dealt with. Everyone from the dragons trembled when they heard Little Star's words. Their expressions instantly turned ugly. Dragon 9 was at a loss for words and did not know how to answer. They all knew that the purest azure dragon bloodline flowed in Little Star's body, and that she was the dragon god's daughter. Therefore, her words could be said to represent the wishes of the Azure Dragon clan. The dragons in this world were only one of the insignificant branches of the Azure Dragon clan. If they disobeyed Little Xingxing's wishes, they might not be completely annihilated by the main clan, but the punishment they would face would definitely be like purgatory. Perhaps it would be even more terrifying than death. In other words, it seemed that the dragons had no other choice but to submit and compromise. Dragon 9's face was ashen as he clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. His voice was gloomy as he said, "Don't force me." "Force you?" Du Xiaofu's eyebrows shot up. He could sense the anger and unwillingness in Dragon 9's words. But no matter how unwilling he was not worthy of his sympathy. Du Xiaofu said coldly, "Now, do you still have a way out? Unless you really intend to collude with the devil religion. Otherwise, who gave you the courage to say such words? Du Xiaofu, don't go too far." Dragon 9's face suddenly turned sinister as he shouted, "We dragons will never change our minds just because of the purple dragon emperor. The daughter of the dragon god is just a rumor. Who knows if it's true or not? There's no way a dragon would listen to an unknown person. He. The dragon god's daughter is just a rumor, and her origins are unknown. How laughable." Du Xiaofu couldn't help but laugh at Dragon 9's words. How could he not understand Dragon 9's intentions? The dragon race was planning to shamelessly refuse to acknowledge Little Xingxing's identity and pretend to be confused. With such an excuse, he could indeed ignore Little Xingxing's orders. Even if they were to face the Azure Dragon clan's reprimand in the future, they would have a certain excuse to avoid excessive punishment. One had to admit that this Dragon 9 had lived for countless years. He was really a scheming old fox. With extreme disdain and sneering, Du Xiaofu continued, "You can even say such self-deceiving words. To be honest, even I feel embarrassed for you. I just want to ask, do you still have any shame? You." The dragons glared at Du Xiaofu angrily, wishing they could tear him into pieces with their gazes. Even the identity of the purple dragon emperor can't suppress you. Looks like the dragons are still stubborn and don't even care about the main dragons. You're determined to go against us. Du Xiaofu curled his lips and shook his head to express his disappointment. He was already mentally prepared and knew that the dragon's trip this time would not convince them easily. However, he didn't expect this group of people to be so shameless. Even the identity of the Azure Dragon clan and Little Xingxing couldn't suppress them. "If you continue to be so aggressive, we dragons will fight to the death with you," Long Jilgu said with a cold expression on his face. "Fight to the death." Du Xiaofu sneered and swept his gaze across the dragons. "With the current strength of the dragons, what right do you have to talk to me about fighting to the death? With a group of losers like you? Du Xiaofu, we dragons have long been irreconcilable with you. Today, you trespassed into the Nirvana Dragon Abyss, destroyed our clan's ancient talisman array, and humiliated us again and again. We dragons swear to fight to the death with you. Long Qianchao could no longer control his furious emotions. He jumped out and pointed at Du Xiaofu's nose as he shouted. As he spoke, his body bloomed with a light like the sun. A monstrous aura erupted and an invisible force crushed toward Du Xiaofu and Little Xingxing. At the same time, other than Dragon 9, the other dragons also joined Long Qianchao and released a powerful aura. A bunch of stubborn old things. Du Xiaofu snorted. His body emitted a purple-gold light and the thunder martial vein covered his body. The power of thunder and lightning surged out. In an instant, an extremely powerful aura swept through the entire area. It was as if a god had descended to earth, pressing down on many dragons until they couldn't breathe. Du Xiaofu looked at Dragon 9, who didn't move. He was the strongest dragons here. The purple-robed young man said calmly, "If you weren't afraid, why would you say so much to me? Your ultimate goal should be to shed all pretenses of cordiality with me and kill the two of us. This way, even if the Azure Dragon clan investigates in the future, you'll have enough excuses, right?" Dragon 9's gaze trembled slightly and he didn't speak for a long time. It was as if Du Xiaofu's words had completely exposed his thoughts. After a long time, Dragon 9 gathered his thoughts and looked at Du Xiaofu with his old eyes. "Du Xiaofu, I'll say it again. You must know that this is the dragons, not the outside world. It's not a place where you can act wildly. Since we've already spoken, this old man won't beat around the bush. You two juniors have no right to be arrogant here." This time, Dragon 9's tone was unusually calm. Only when he had made up his mind would he be able to remain so calm and collected. This change naturally couldn't escape Du Xiaofu's perception. He knew that the dragons were planning to attack and kill him and Little Xingxing here. Needless to say, it must be as he expected. The dragons must have many trump cards that they hadn't revealed yet. If a few more powerhouses like Dragon 9 came, it would indeed be very difficult for the two of them to win. With this in mind, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but turn back and look in the direction of the primordial Nirvana Dragon formation. Yi Piaoling, Qian Guyu, and the other 18 heavenly guards should be arriving soon. As long as they arrived, even if a few more old monsters emerged from the dragons, they would still have the power to fight. Seeing that Du Xiaofu didn't respond, Dragon 9 spoke again indifferently, "Since you've already said so much, there's no need for you to leave today." Little Xingxing took a step forward, and the mark on his forehead glowed with an extremely demonic light. He stared intently at Dragon 9 and snorted. "I really don't know where you get your confidence from, old thing. Father, why bother wasting time with them? These people are very stubborn. It looks like they really won't give in so easily." Du Xiaofu nodded, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He said to Dragon 9, "It's fine if you don't want to submit, but I'll beat you until you do." Chapter 25-27. As they spoke, Du Xiaofu, Little Xingxing, Dragon 9, Long Qianchao, and the others all made their moves. Since they had already shed all pretenses of cordiality, and even the most unpleasant words had already been said, there was no longer any room for negotiation. To the dragons, only by killing Du Xiaofu and Little Xingxing could they obtain the final peace. As for Du Xiaofu, he had to use his fists to reason with the other party and teach them how to be human. Screech! With a sharp cry, the rock's cry resounded throughout the four seas. Golden light enveloped Du Xiaofu's entire body, as dazzling as the scorching sun. Then, unparalleled bolts of lightning charged out from the golden light. Rumbling sounds of explosions rang out incessantly, carrying with them a terrifying murderous aura that swept across the vast and mighty area. Du Xiaofu charged forward, pouncing towards Dragon 9. The aura of the gods and demons rolled out, his aura boiling, as terrifying as the creation of the heavens and earth. In the blink of an eye, a terrifying battle broke out between the two of them as they clashed. At the same time, little Xingxing let out a high-pitched dragon roar from her throat and transformed into her dragon form. An endless dragon's might, accompanied by torrential flames, instantly filled the surrounding space. This caused all the powerful individuals from the dragon tribe to feel their hearts palpitating. Just the natural pressure of this supreme bloodline directly weakened their combat power to a certain extent. Shameless old things, you don't even care about my father and the Green Dragon clan. I really don't know who gave you the guts. Little Xingxing let out a soft cry. The father she was referring to was naturally her biological father, the dragon god. Little Xingxing said domineeringly, the people of the dragons are all proud and unyielding. People like you who are scared out of your wits by the demon god and only want to stay out of this matter are not worthy of being a branch of the dragons. Since that's the case, I'll clean up the family today, break your dragon bones, and release your dragon blood, because you don't deserve to have these things. As she spoke, little Xingxing's wings suddenly flapped as she charged towards Long Qianchao. A vibrant vermilion bird projection appeared, and a rainbow divine light engulfed the entire space. Little Xingxing displayed his most terrifying technique. It was as if he could affect spacetime. It was as if he had crossed spacetime to come here, causing the space to riot. He could crush spacetime and that monstrous seven-colored flame burned the void. Long Qianchao's eyes trembled fiercely, and even his spirit couldn't help but tremble. Behind him, the other dragons were the same. The fear in their hearts made them want to prostrate themselves before Little Star. The might of the seven-colored vermilion bird fused with the might of the dragon, causing their hearts to tremble. Follow me, let's kill this little thing first. Long Qianchao suppressed the fear in his heart and shouted to the people behind him. Then, they transformed into the true form of dragons. Roar! Dragon roars rang out. In the next instant, the sea of clouds in the void rolled. Raging flames filled the air. The entire void seemed to have been crushed. Long Qianchao squeezed the void as he expanded. An incomparably huge dragon of immeasurable length appeared, its claws able to tear the void apart. When the dragon appeared, its entire body was covered in raging flames. The flames covered its dragon scales, but it gave off a feeling of being as tough as steel. On its ferocious head, the dragon's eyes were like red black holes, as if they could swallow the world. At the same time, the other dragons attacked at the same time. Dozens of giant dragons stretched across the void. Although their auras were not as powerful as Long Qianchao's, all of them had the cultivation of the sage stage. Many of them joined forces, and all of them were targeting Little Xingxing alone. Kill! Little Xingxing shouted. There was no fear in his dragon eyes. As he spread his wings, an unparalleled murderous aura swept up. Like a tiger in a flock of sheep, he charged into the many dragons. Boom, 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 boom. On the other side, the battle between Du Xiaofu and Dragon 9 was also in progress. Endless power swept across the void, and deafening collisions shook the void. Seven-colored light, lightning, and endless golden light bloomed everywhere. Countless talismans and mystic runes were shattered and annihilated, filling the air with whistling sounds. The sea churned, the ground cracked, and the void shattered. Terrifying energy wreaked havoc, shattering everything as if it was the end of the world. Not far away, the primordial Nirvana dragon formation had already been repeatedly destroyed by Du Xiaofu and Little Xingxing. At this time, it was affected by the aftermath of the battle and directly shattered. If they wanted to rebuild it, they would need an incalculable amount of resources. Old thing, you're no match for me now. During the battle, Du Xiaofu used the ultimate meaning of lightning. Lightning fell from the sky. Bolts of lightning as thick as mountains fell from the 9 heavens, turning the Nirvana dragon abyss into a sea of lightning. Dragon 9's old and tall body bobbed up and down in the sea of lightning. Although this powerhouse who had walked out of the eternal tomb was extremely powerful, he seemed to be a little tired at this time. One had to know that not long ago in the ancient wilderness continent, Du Xiaofu had killed Patriarch Zhang Jia of the Gulan Heavenly Eagle race, Patriarch Feng San of the distant Sky Flame Phoenix race, and the Yu family's patriarch. These people's cultivation levels were not much lower than Dragon 9's. Moreover, Du Xiaofu was still comprehending the inheritance left behind by his ancestors in the sacred palace, and his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Therefore, although he could not completely defeat Dragon 9, he was completely suppressing him and had the absolute upper hand. Du Xiaofu, it won't be that easy for you to kill me. Dragon 9's main body, which was transformed from dragons, opened its mouth and spat out a bright beam of light, shattering the lightning in front of it. At the same time, it said, "You can't kill me, and I can't do anything to you. But that little girl is different. Just wait to collect her corpse." Dragon 9 waved its powerful dragon claws and fought fiercely with Du Xiaofu. His goal was very simple. He did not seek to defeat his opponent, but to delay him and create an opportunity for Long Qianchao and the others to kill the Purple Dragon Emperor. When the time came, many dragons would swarm him, and no matter how many tricks Du Xiaofu had, he would not be able to escape death. "You want to kill me? Don't you know if these insects have the strength to do so?" On the other side, little Xingxing also heard Dragon 9's words and could not help but snort coldly. Her situation was not very optimistic. More than 10 sage dragons surrounded her, and it was indeed difficult for her to fight back. However, she did not show signs of defeat as Dragon 9 had said. Du Xiaofu knew that with little Xingxing's strength, it would be harder for those people to kill her than to reach the heavens. Not to mention, she still had some hidden tricks that she had not used yet. Kill. As long as we kill this little thing, Du Xiaofu will also not be able to escape today. Long Qianchao roared, and his dragon roar spread everywhere, leading many dragons to attack with all their might. "Old thing, summon your dragon's trump card. Otherwise, you won't have a chance to fight back today." During the battle, Du Xiaofu's mind was also spread out, and he could not help but smile when he sensed the movements outside. Chapter 25-28. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, Dragon 9 also felt that something was wrong. Looking up, he saw a majestic aura surging in the broken talisman array. Then, he saw a group of figures walking on the waves. Swoosh 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 swoosh, 18 figures in a row, each with a valiant aura and a cold murderous aura, passed through the immemorial nirvana dragon formation. The 18 celestial generals. Many of the dragon's experts narrowed their eyes. Many of them had experienced the valiant stance of these 18 people before. Moreover, the 18 celestial generals had made a name for themselves in the outside world. These 18 people were like 18 death gods. Who in the Sanlu Kyushu had not heard of the 18 celestial generals? With their help, it was no wonder that Du Xiaofu dared to say such arrogant words in front of the dragons. Kill. As soon as the 18 celestial generals arrived, Yi Piaoling, who was in the lead, suddenly shouted coldly. When Qian Guyu, Stone, Ying Yan, Yin Tianjue, and the others heard this, they did not say a word and directly pounced on the dragon's experts who were besieging little Xingxing. Cold murderous aura rippled from each of the figures. Their cultivation was all above the saint realm. Most importantly, there was absolute tacit understanding between the 18 of them. They had gained experience in life and death battles, and their cooperation was flawless. "Oh no!" a dragon's expert shouted. Ah! Fierce collisions unfolded, and miserable cries rang out. Some people were seriously injured in the first exchange, vomiting blood and retreating. Don't be too heavy-handed. Keep them alive, there's still a great use for them. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly as he said casually. Just as he had said earlier, he did not come to the dragons to kill. It was to tame them. Whether they were willing or not, they had to submit to little Xingxing. It was not up to them. Therefore, keeping them alive was more valuable than killing them. Thief, you've gone too far. Dragon Nine's claws, which looked like they could blot out the blue sky, came crashing down and knocked Du Xiaofu back slightly. The ferocity of the 18 celestial guards shocked him to the core. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before all of the Dragon Saint Realm experts were wiped out and lost their ability to fight. After that, Long Jiugu's dragon head, which was full of scales and hair, roared toward the depths of the Dragon Clan. Long Huang, Long Yu, the Dragon Clan is in danger. If you don't show up now, when will you? These words caused Du Xiaofu to involuntarily look in that direction. As Long Jiugu's words left his mouth, a rosy mist suddenly rose up from the area where Long Jiugu was. The thick fog was like a dark cloud that kept rolling, carrying with it an aura that could topple mountains and overturn seas. At the same time, rays of golden light bloomed in the rolling dark clouds, piercing through the fog and penetrating it. There really is an old monster in seclusion. Du Xiaofu thought to himself. When this scene appeared, he already understood in his heart that the true foundation of the Dragon Clan was about to be revealed. Sure enough, a dragon's roar resounded, and a loud and clear sound wave instantly spread out in the field. This sound wave was all-pervasive and attacked one's soul. The 18 celestial guards, led by Yi Piaoling, were instantly forced back, their faces pale. Even with Du Xiaofu's cultivation, he felt his ears go numb. Many of the dragon's experts stopped fighting and wanted to prostrate, but at the same time, they were excited from the bottom of their hearts. An old mixed-blood dragon dares to be impudent in front of me. Little Xingxing was not affected at all. Instead, while everyone was retreating, the dragon's main body stretched out horizontally. Instead of retreating, it charged towards the depths of the dragons. Roar! Little Xingxing roared, but the sound wave did not seem too loud and clear. Compared to the dragon roar just now, it even seemed a little immature. However, such a roar caused the surrounding dragons and all the saints to finally collapse to the ground at the same time. Young man, all of you should retreat. We dragons have our own rules of conduct. Why do you have to force us step by step? An aged voice could be heard. Immediately after, they saw the golden light break through the barrier of the thick fog, but as soon as it became bigger and brighter, it slowly converged. Then, a simple and thin old dragon slowly flew out of the fog. On its body, the dragon horns were shriveled, the dragon whiskers were sparse, and the dragon scales were dim. When it opened its mouth, the dragon teeth were peeled off and missing, and it looked like it was about to die. However, it was such an old dragon. After it appeared, it waved its hand, and in an instant, wind and thunder rolled up in the sky and swept towards Little Xingxing. A seemingly gentle force struck out, but when it landed on Little Xingxing's body, it carried a powerful force that was difficult to resist. Little Xingxing's strange dragon body was slowly repelled. Even if it used all its strength, it could not resist at all. What a terrifying expert! Du Xiaofu could not help but tremble. This old dragon, who looked like it had one foot in the grave, was definitely not as weak as it looked on the surface. Instead, it had extremely terrifying strength. Greetings, Patriarch Long Huang. After the old dragon appeared, the group of dragons led by Long Qianchao all knelt on the ground and shouted in unison, saluting the old dragon. Young man, if you are willing to leave now, the grudge between you and us dragons will be written off, and we will not owe each other anything. We dragons will not interfere in your battle with the demon god. At the same time, you will not interfere in the affairs of us dragons. Okay. A faint light flashed all over the old dragon's body, and it turned into a human form. It was a stooped little old man. There was no luster in his turbid old eyes, and his hair and small dragon whiskers were sparse and snow-white. There was no domineering tone in his words. Instead, there was a hint of negotiation. Du Xiaofu's murderous aura immediately retracted a little in the face of this old dragon who did not rely on his cultivation to be overbearing. However, before he could say anything, another voice rang out. No, we must not let them leave. This voice also came from the thick fog. Everyone looked up and saw a figure rushing out from there. Golden light spread out and filled the air, piercing everyone's eyes. Everyone subconsciously raised their hands to shield their eyes. When the light faded, everyone saw a tall and burly old man standing in the middle of the field. This old man had a strong body and a ruddy face. His eyes were blooming with divine light, and his eyebrows carried a strong murderous aura. Seeing this old man, the dragons knelt on the ground again and called out to their patriarch. Du Xiaofu also knew from their greetings that this old man was called Long Yu. May I know who the two of you are? Can your words represent the dragons? Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and asked. He could feel that Long Huang and Long Yu's strength was incomparably terrifying. They were probably much stronger than the Yu family's patriarch. Since that was the case, there was no need to say more about their status in the dragons. However, Du Xiaofu wanted to test whether the dragons still had more hidden experts who had not appeared. As expected, when he heard Du Xiaofu's words, Long Qianchao's expression suddenly changed and he jumped out. He transformed into his human form, stretched out his hand, pointed at Du Xiaofu's nose, and cursed, Du Xiaofu, you are too arrogant. These are the two patriarchs of my clan who have lived for countless years. Their status in the dragons is supreme. How can a brat like you question them? In response, Du Xiaofu only glanced at him indifferently and then smiled lightly. Long Qianchao's words allowed Du Xiaofu to have an idea in his heart. Presumably, these two people were already the strongest experts hidden in the dragons. Since I've come, there's no reason for me to retreat. Du Xiaofu looked at the old man called Long Huang and smiled. Earlier, this old dragon's attitude had made him have a slightly good impression. Humph, little bastard, do you think you can still leave? Long Huang hadn't spoken when Long Yu's brows rose and he once again took over Du Xiaofu's words. How many disciples of my clan have you killed? Today, you even trespassed into my Nirvana dragon abyss. How can I let you leave so easily? Why don't you just leave your life here? Coldness instantly brewed in Du Xiaofu's eyes when he heard this. Looks like today's matter still can't be settled peacefully. Du Xiaofu said coldly. Long Yu's attitude was different from Long Huang's. This old man didn't intend to let things go. Since that was the case, Du Xiaofu didn't want to say anything more to them. 18 Celestial Generals. Du Xiaofu suddenly shouted. Yes. Yi Piaoling, Qian Guyu, Stone, and the rest of the 18 responded in unison. I'll leave those mixed-blood dragons to you. Beat them up for me, but don't kill them. Du Xiaofu ordered coldly, Little Star, go and stall Dragon 9. Let me teach the other two a lesson. Little bastard, you want to deal with the two of us at the same time by yourself? Don't you think you're too arrogant? Long Yu's eyes widened like copper bells, showing extreme contempt and disdain. His and Long Huang's strength was definitely at the peak of this world. In this world, there might be a few people stronger than them, but they were definitely not people the young man in front of him could compare to. Old thing, do you like to scold people that much? Since your mouth is so cheap, I'll teach you how to speak properly. Long Yu kept calling him a little bastard, causing Du Xiaofu's killing intent to explode. Even though these two old fellows were exceptionally powerful, even more powerful than Patriarch Zhang Jie, Patriarch Feng San, and the Yu clan's old emperor, they were still able to defeat Patriarch Zhang Jie, Patriarch Feng San, and Patriarch Feng San. However, the current Du Xiaofu had already improved greatly. How could he be afraid of them? Furthermore, he had never been someone who was afraid of trouble. Du Xiaofu summoned the purple gold heavenly fault and held it in his hand. His body suddenly emitted a bright golden light, making him look as dazzling as the sun. Amidst the dazzling light, a pair of purple gold wings took shape behind him. Immediately after, Du Xiaofu's body soared into the sky, standing high up in the sky. Old mixed-blood dragon, take my sword. Holy sword roar. Du Xiaofu shouted, raising his sword with both hands. The purple-gold heavenly fault let out a sharp whistle, bringing with it a terrifying aura. Endless energy gathered on it, condensing into a terrifying sword light, slashing down at Long Yu's head. You're courting death. As Long Yu shouted, he moved. His huge body appeared. His horns were lofty, his scales and claws were awe-inspiring, and he was about to pounce. A dragon's roar burst forth, causing the void to tremble endlessly. Following that, a dragon's mouth swallowed the sky and spat out a cloud at Du Xiaofu. Sigh, why do you have to do this? When the old dragon named Long Huang saw this, he sighed and staggered forward. I didn't want to be your enemy, but you didn't want to leave. If that's the case, I really can't keep you. The old dragon did not transform into his original body. Stepping on the void, he seemed to be walking slowly towards Du Xiaofu. But in reality, his speed was incomparably fast. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived beside Du Xiaofu. Old thing, watch as I beat you up. Seeing that the other side had already begun to fight, little Xingxing's original body also flew over and pounced towards Dragon 9. Kill! Yi Piaoling's low and concise voice rang out, and the 18 heavenly guards moved with it. Everyone held their weapons, erupting with a terrifying aura as they charged towards Long Qianchao and the others. In an instant, a terrifying battle broke out. Destructive energy descended like a tsunami, sweeping away everything in its path and swallowing everything in this space. Strong light surged, and sharp whistles rumbled. Everything was shattered and annihilated, turning into fine powder, boiling up and down in the space. Many of the dragons who were not strong enough had already hidden far away. With their cultivation base, in this situation, they would be injured and die if they touched anything. There was no way for them to escape by luck. Demon King Du Xiaofu came with an arrogant aura, causing the dragons to use all their trump cards. After a few rounds of fighting, a battle that was destined to have a far-reaching impact could not be avoided in the end. Everyone was trembling with fear as they watched this unprecedented battle. The main focus was naturally the battle between the Patriarch, who had been in seclusion for countless years, and the Demon King Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's sword slashed down, and heaven and earth were overshadowed by that resplendent sword light. As the purple-gold heavenly tower slashed down, a vast amount of energy gathered and formed a sky-piercing sword light that crushed everything. Soaring dragon seizes the sun. In the face of Du Xiaofu's attack, this shout came from Long Yu's original body. The immeasurable dragon body swept through the void at extreme speed, and the space was directly crushed by the pressure. The dragon opened its mouth wide and rosy clouds rose. It bit down on Du Xiaofu like a divine dragon trying to snatch a pearl. Open for me. The purple-gold heavenly tower let out an earth-shattering sound, as if the gods were roaring. The Demon King was roaring, and it was breathtaking. The sword light finally slashed down, slashing on Long Yu's huge head. Boom, 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 the two powerful forces collided, and a terrifying storm that could annihilate everything erupted. Dense talisman runes swirled and danced in the air, forcing Long Yu to retreat dozens of feet. At the same time, Du Xiaofu also suffered a great impact, and his body retreated hundreds of feet. One collision was enough to determine the winner. Obviously, in terms of raw strength, Du Xiaofu still had a certain gap between him and this old monster. At least 30% stronger than Yutuancheng. Du Xiaofu secretly estimated. However, he was not afraid. He could even kill Yutuancheng. Although it was a little difficult to deal with this old thing, it was also not something that was insurmountable. Du Xiaofu's emotions were fluctuating. Before he could adjust his posture and prepare for the next attack, he saw that stooped old dragon had already arrived in front of him. Young man, why bother? Long Huang raised a palm without the slightest fluctuation of aura, and slowly and indifferently slapped towards Du Xiaofu's chest, since you insist on becoming enemies with us dragons, then I can only keep you here. This palm was the same as this old man's appearance, incomparably simple. Regardless of whether it was in terms of speed or momentum, it was like it was released by an ordinary person without cultivation. However, Du Xiaofu knew that this old dragon spoke politely, but when he attacked, it was incomparably fierce and did not have the slightest bit of ambiguity. In his heart, he did not dare to underestimate it in the slightest. Rippling carefree steps. Without any thought, Du Xiaofu's feet moved. Strange footwork unfolded, and the light of thunder coiled around his feet, causing his figure to instantly become strange and ethereal. Just as Long Huang's palm was about to hit Du Xiaofu's chest, at the critical moment, his body twisted, and he calmly and dangerously dodged it. At the same time, Long Huang's palm strike struck the void. Wang, a dizzying buzzing sound rang out, capable of affecting one's soul. At the place where the old dragon's palm landed, a palm-shaped black hole silently appeared in the air. After a long time, it still did not dissipate, as if it was branded. You do have some ability. The old dragon retracted his palm and muttered. Following that, he unfolded his body and charged towards Du Xiaofu. At the same time, Long Yu did not stop either. Together with Long Yu, they surrounded and attacked the purple-robed youth. No wonder it can be used as the foundation of the dragons. It's really strong to the point of being abnormal. Du Xiaofu muttered to himself. Before coming to the dragons, he had already expected that this trip would not be smooth sailing. It was also because of this that he allowed the 18 heavenly generals to accompany him. At this moment, facing these two old monsters, even with Du Xiaofu's current strength, he did not dare to let his guard down. I'll go all out, I don't believe that I can't take care of these two old things. Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and put away the purple-gold heavenly fault. Between his hands, he began to move according to a strange trajectory. One after another, complicated and profound hand seals rapidly condensed in his palms, cryptic and profound. In next to no time, a strange pressure rose rapidly and filled every inch of space, causing everyone to feel their souls tremble. Even the two powerhouses, Long Huang and Long Yu, unconsciously paused for a moment. This caused the two supreme experts of the dragons to feel incredulous. The two of them realized that the purple-robed youth's next move was absolutely terrifying. What's the use of having so many tricks? You're still too inexperienced in the end. Long Huang spoke with a calm and composed voice. His stooped old body suddenly straightened up, and his pair of muddy old eyes also blossomed with a sharp and absolute light. An invisible aura rose from his body, and as he waved his withered palm, there was an indescribable charm. It was an indescribable feeling. It was as though the world was dyed with a special rhythm along with Long Huang's actions, fluctuating with a mysterious rhythm. His every move carried the charm of the great Tao. Du Xiaofu was moved by this scene as well. At this moment, he only felt that the law imprint engraved on his essence spirit was trembling as well. Others might find it difficult to understand, but Du Xiaofu knew that this situation might have already transcended the level of profoundness. Long Huang's cultivation had already reached an extremely terrifying realm. In fact, he was not far from the true heavenly saint realm. The old man waved his hand and moved. It was still a light palm that pressed straight towards Du Xiaofu. However, this seemingly peaceful and harmless attack gave people a feeling that it was impossible to dodge. Heavenly Saint Realm? I'm afraid he's still far from it. Du Xiaofu composed himself and flipped his hands repeatedly, forming seals. An incomparably massive 8 trigrams diagram condensed above his head. The awe-inspiring pressure was mighty and pervasive. Layers of thunderclouds gathered and appeared above the void 8 trigrams. Heaven above and earth below, heavenly thunder, absolute destruction. Du Xiaofu hollered. Beneath the 8 trigrams diagram, heavenly thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. Resplendent runes interweaved into a gigantic lightning net that traversed the universe and swept down towards Long Huang and Long Yu with an extreme yang aura. "Break!" Long Huang said faintly. His palm, which had no aura fluctuations, was imprinted on the boundless lightning net. At the same time, the colossal dragon body that Long Yu transformed into also twisted upwards, pressing the void until it rumbled. His dragon body twisted and rolled, plunging headlong into the boundless energy frenzy. Bang! 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 A deafening roar reverberated through the area. The giant thunderbolt net was destroyed by Long Huang's handprint in just a single exchange. Right on the heels of that, Long Yu's dragon tail swept and swung down towards Du Xiaofu's head. The tyrannical force howled, bringing along the sound of howling wind, cleaving out 100-mile-long rift in space. How could Du Xiaofu dare to receive such a blow head-on? Without even thinking, he drifted backwards. During this process, the hand seals in Du Xiaofu's hands were still condensing continuously. Invisible power rippled. With him as the center, the 8 trigrams diagram in the void continued to spread out. The 8 trigrams diagram was evolving, changing, deriving, upper Kun and lower Li, earthly fire bright destruction. As Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed rapidly, billowing flames spurted out from the void under his feet. It was like a sea of fire rising, intertwining, entangling and fusing with the shattered thunderbolts from before, converging into an even more powerful attack. At the same time this attack took shape, Long Yu's dragon tail also smashed down. Chi! 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 2 terrifying forces suddenly collided, engulfing and grinding each other out. The sea of lightning and fire was smashed into smithereens. Du Xiaofu turned around and retreated again, avoiding the energy storm that filled the sky. At this time, the gigantic lightning net and boundless sea of fire that he painstakingly condensed were already destroyed. Above his head, only a lonely 8 trigrams diagram in the void was left, still flickering with light. Again. An unyielding fighting spirit also welled up in Du Xiaofu's heart. Long Huang and Long Yu could be said to be the top experts in this world. They were about the same as Huolei Laozu, whose strength had been reduced. Other than the demon god, there was also the eastern deity, western demon, southern Ru, and northern addict. Only Fui Bai, Crazy Ol, and a few others were their match. Such powerful opponents were hard to find. Therefore, Du Xiaofu's heart was also filled with an unyielding spirit. Otherwise, he might as well borrow the hands of these 2 supreme experts to temper himself. Chapter 25-29. The Void 8 trigrams was one of Du Xiaofu's strongest techniques. However, at this moment, he was facing 2 of the most powerful beings of the dragon tribe by himself. He was at an absolute disadvantage. The giant lightning net and endless sea of fire that he had painstakingly created were easily destroyed by the 2 of them. However, under such circumstances, he became stubborn and wanted to use the 2 of them to train himself. If Long Huang and Long Yu knew what Du Xiaofu was thinking, they would feel indescribably shocked and exasperated at the same time. The purple-robed young man in front of them was indeed different from ordinary people. Under the siege of 2 powerful experts, he did not think about how to save his life but still wanted to train himself. No wonder he could achieve what he had today at such a young age. It was definitely not a coincidence. Of course, Long Huang and Long Yu did not know this. Their actions did not stop as they charged towards Du Xiaofu again, wanting to take him down. "Young man, you shouldn't have come to my dragons." Long Huang continued to mumble to himself. His body was no longer hunched and showed a sense of straightness. His pair of old hands moved in the void according to a strange trajectory. Following his movements, the entire space seemed to be dyed with an inexplicable charm. "Old thing, stop pretending to be a good person. Since you want to kill me, then do it." Why do you have to make it sound so dignified and helpless? You even did something like attacking me together and still put on an act. I don't see your old face blushing at all. Du Xiaofu said with a cold smile. How could he not understand at this point? This Long Huang had been chattering non-stop and putting on an act, as if he was forced to deal with him. However, when he attacked, he was very tough and did not have the slightest bit of mercy. Even he himself was fooled by his style. He still thought that he was a kind and good person. To think that Du Xiaofu had a good impression of this old dragon from the start. Thinking of this in his mind, Du Xiaofu's mind moved slightly, and his body was covered with a layer of hazy brilliance. The cyan spirit armor was summoned, with a biting cold and tough aura. Facing these two old monsters, he had no choice but to be cautious. "Ha, young man, you're too naive. Then let me show you what is called absolute power." Long Huang chuckled and his hands never stopped moving. A powerful pressure gradually rose in this space, pressing down on every corner, making people feel extremely suffocated. Even breathing slowly became difficult. In the distance, the movements of Little Xingxing, Dragon 9, Long Qianchao, Yi Piaoling, and the others who were fighting became a lot slower, as if they were under great pressure. How terrifying! Is this the power of profound? But how can it be so powerful? It is indeed the power of Upanishad, but it seems to be one level deeper. Many people stopped fighting one after another and fled into the distance. They could not help but discuss and were shocked. If these people were already like this, Du Xiaofu, who bore the brunt of it, felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. The vast pressure was everywhere, crushing inward from his body. Even with the strength of his immortal Xian body, he felt as if he was about to explode. This made Du Xiaofu's face become ferocious. Of the two supreme experts of the dragon race, the one that Du Xiaofu was most wary of was the old dragon named Long Huang, who looked old and frail. Just as Hun Ji had told him, the saint stage was the highest in profound. If one wanted to break through the heavenly saint stage, one had to surpass the profound, control the laws, and interpret the patterns of the great Tao with every move. Its divine power was immeasurable, and it was above all living things. Domineering Tao, rise for me. Thunder martial vein, open for me. Empty heaven and earth, break for me. Du Xiaofu shouted repeatedly. As his voice fell, a series of moves were performed with all his might. Domineering Tao was performed, and a majestic aura gushed out from Du Xiaofu's body. From the inside out, it wrapped his body in an instant, resisting the immense pressure that was everywhere. At the same time, waves of lightning lit up and crawled all over his body. In the sky, dark clouds rolled, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. An aura that seemed to split heaven and earth was rapidly brewing. A lightning bolt as thick as a mountain came crashing down, shattering the void. At the same time, the purple-gold heavenly tower appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand. A sword light that reached the sky suddenly formed and slashed toward Long Huang without hesitation. Scar of the firmament. Long Huang still looked calm, like an ancient well without any ripples. A pair of old hands faced each other and suddenly clasped together in front of his chest. Boom! A soul-shaking bang suddenly rang out in the void. Where Du Xiaofu was, the space trembled violently. Everything in that area, including Du Xiaofu himself, was distorted and shrunk in an instant. This scene looked like a piece of paper that had suddenly been crushed into a ball, producing a terrifying wrinkle. The 8 trigrams that Du Xiaofu displayed in the void wailed and then shattered. The dazzling sword light was also crushed into pieces, turning into countless talisman runes that were rubbed into the folds of space. The lightning that filled the sky had lost its guiding force and scattered. Father! Rock Emperor! This scene made Little Xingxing, Yi Piaoling, Qian Guyu, and the others in the distance couldn't help but exclaim. Patriarch Long Huang's strength is so terrifying. Of course, that's the strongest expert of our dragons, the strongest foundation of our clan. How can Du Xiaofu contend against him? That's right, a childish brat dares to be arrogant and fight with the patriarch. That little thief is dead for sure. The patriarch's power is not something that ordinary people can estimate. The dragons were also in an uproar. Long Huang's strength made everyone unbelievably shocked. At the same time, they also felt that Du Xiaofu was too arrogant, daring to be impudent in front of the dragons. Under Patriarch Long Huang's attack, how could he be lucky enough to escape? As everyone watched from afar, the spatial wrinkles slowly unfolded and returned to their original appearance. Du Xiaofu was like a reptile wrapped in paper. After unfolding, he fell out of the paper and fell from the sky. Before landing, the purple gold heavenly fault in his hand supported his body on the ground. He bent his knees and half knelt, so that he wouldn't completely collapse. On his body, the blue spirit armor cracked and disappeared. Purple gold blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and dripped to the ground. His purple robe was also hanging on his body in tatters, revealing his muscles. Crisscrossing wounds were all over his body, flowing with blood. Even the indestructible Xian body, which was so strong that it was perverted, had been injured to such an extent by Long Huang's attack. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.